after leaving Al-Wada, and positive signs for Amla and his Tuskers outfit. More details at 3:30.
Aldrin Sampear muhashi wa ntokoto na vutshila wena masusa xivundza mayi rito eka lava ri pfumalaka rito leri hangalakeke na misava hinkwayo ri haxa mbewu ya vutlhari xana imani a nga ku miyetaka ke imani a nga miyetaka mpfumawulo wa rito ra kuke 3-6 hi tshama hi ri etindleve eka SAFM hikuva u yi phamela swakudya swa miehleketo hi dya yi tlhela hi xipa ndzi ri halala Aldrin Sampear halala wena la tselekiweke eswitikweni swa vutlhari a katingiwa etimbiteni ta vutivi a sekiwa hi galaza ra vutshila loko ri mina ntombi ya mutongo n'wa xambula makutlo wa madyafu ri la tsundzuka n'wana hi ku heta ndzi ku hluvulela xihuku ndzi ri kula u ringana na ndlopfu halala Aldrin Sampear halala.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 6 minutes after 3 o'clock. Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Headline with me, Aldrin Sampear. Thank you so much for making time for us this afternoon. We're with you from now up until 6 o'clock. So coming up on the show this afternoon, we start off by looking at what's happening in Israel as well as Gaza. Remember that today is the final day of the 4-day truce that was negotiated by Qatar. So the Israeli government has said that there is a possibility of extending the truce by an additional day, and that is if Hamas is willing to release at least 10 hostages. So 10 hostages in exchange for an extra day of the truce. But then in the same breath as well, Benjamin Netanyahu speaking also in Gaza over the weekend, saying that after the 4-day truce comes to an end, they will continue with their operation to flush out Hamas in Gaza. So that conversation we'll be having with the Israeli Defense Force spokesperson, who will be joining us in the next short while to speak to us about where they are currently, also the negotiations that are underway for a possible extension of the truce. So that conversation is coming up in the next short while. Also on the show this afternoon, we look at the situation in Sierra Leone, and this is following attacks on a military barracks in the capital city, Freetown. We'll be speaking to David Matsanga, who's a political analyst and also expert in diplomatic relations. And then we're looking at what happened in the Senzo Meyiwa murder case. You may have seen some footage or heard in the news that there was a scuffle that broke out between the prison warders as well as some of the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa case, because they were told to sit properly, and then just the scuffle then ensued. So we'll be speaking to Pearl Makubane, SABC News reporter, on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. And at around 5 o'clock, one of the conversations that we're looking at is actually over the weekend on Friday. I attended JJ Dabane's Frank Dialogues, where he speaks to various stakeholders, and this past Friday he had Songezo Zibi, who is the leader of Rise Mzansi, a newly formed political party. Songezo mentioned something quite interesting apart from what it is that they want to offer, but he says that very soon the party will be launching what they call the 99,000 campaign, and the 99,000 campaign is almost something similar to what the EFF had said before, encouraging potential donors to pledge money and donations to the party at below the 100,000 Rand threshold, which would mean that they need to report. So it needs to be declared. So what the Rise Mzansi is saying that they'll do as well is that they encourage their donors who have money and who are willing to donate to the party to donate below the 100,000 threshold, because then they don't have to declare, because of course some of them, as he says, fear victimization, and some of these people are people who are doing business with the state and fear that the ANC could lash out at them for supporting other political parties, including the likes of Rise Mzansi. So, is this a case of political parties undermining the Political Party Fund Act, or is it a case of a real threat that exists where political parties fear that their fundraising campaigns could be sabotaged because their donors could be attacked by the ANC, which is, of course, the government of the day? It's not the first time that these accusations have been made. I remember even when the DA was pushing against the act, one of the reasons was precisely this, that some companies or some individuals would fear donating money to the opposition parties because they fear reprisal from the ANC government. So that conversation we'll be having with Professor Dirk Coetzee, who's a professor of political sciences at the University of South Africa, that is UNISA. So he'll be joining us at 5:20. What do you make of it? Do you believe that there is a real threat to political parties raising the money that they need to raise for campaigning, especially ahead of the 2024 elections? 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
It's 11 minutes after 3 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, who is Israel's Defense Force spokesperson. As the 4-day truce between Hamas and Israel enters its final day, Israel says it is open to extend the truce if more captives are released by Hamas. On the other hand, Egypt, Qatar, France, as well as the US are calling for the ceasefire to be extended. Joining us now to explain the next move, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, now joining us on the line. Lieutenant Colonel, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon. Hi.
Okay, so today we expect the final exchange to take place. Can you tell us how far are you with regards to that?
We have been for the last 3 days around 3 o'clock, a state of suspense, of anxiety, not clear what is actually going to happen. It's a reality on the ground where Israel is glued to the television. As a society, as a people, and indeed it is a challenging position, a challenging time for the reality on the ground as it develops. We are awaiting the understandings from the military's perspective. We have to be prepared for every scenario. So I would say we're making the necessary preparations to assist evacuation, medical assistance, immediate medical assistance, accompanying the hostages, as we have done over the last 3 days that have been released, to a safe place, to hospitals. That is one level of our readiness, of our preparedness. And the second level, of course, is the forces on the ground and within northern Gaza Strip to be prepared for the eventuality that that Hamas do not live up to their side of the framework, and then mobilizing again against Hamas. This is currently where we are. Unfortunately, I don't have an update with regard to what's going to happen today. We are in a state of constant suspense when it comes to Hamas.
Yeah. Is it true that there has been a delay in exchange of the final hostages as well as prisoners? And if so, what caused the delay?
So the hostages are the key to the holding of our fire. The hostages are key to the hiatus in the combat. The hostages are the key also to the flow of humanitarian aid and assistance into Gaza. I have not got an update regarding if indeed hostages will be released today. As I said, we need to be prepared for that. Hopefully it will happen, but I can't update you regarding what to expect later today. This is the situation that, as I said, Israel has been in a state of anxiety every day for the last 3 days now, because Hamas is holding the hostages as a bargaining key, and is trying to exert maximum anxiety out of Israeli society in their psychological terrorism.
Yeah. Okay. If there is no, or let's start here rather, the potential of having an extension of the truce, if there is an exchange of, I think the number is 10 captives or people who have been held hostage by Hamas, then there will be an extension of a 1-day truce. What are the other conditions that are attached to this, if any?
So the Prime Minister outlined yesterday to the public, Prime Minister Netanyahu outlined to the public yesterday that for every 10 hostages Hamas transfers, there will be a hold in our offensive activities. And this indeed is part of the framework that the government, together with the facilitators, Qatar and the US and Egypt, outlined and agreed upon. And us, from the military's perspective, we need to be willing and prepared to hold our fire for as long as it requires in order to bring hostages home. From our perspective, from the military's perspective, there are two goals for this war from our that we've been directed by the government. First of all, to bring home the hostages, every last one of them, women, children, men, babies. So that is one component, and the other component is making sure that Hamas never wield the power of government again that can undermine and jeopardize the safety and security of Israel. So these two objectives go hand in hand. And if Hamas continue to release hostages, then we can prolong the hold on our fire as instructed by the government. Mm-hmm. This is, we would not be in this position today. Hamas would not have given up any of the hostages if it wasn't for the military action on the ground. They had absolutely no incentive to do so. So we understand that there is a need for the military effort in order to bring home the hostages, every last one of them.
Yeah. And as far as you're concerned, at this particular moment, there hasn't been any agreement with regards to the 10 captives being released.
So, of course, the IDF is not managing the negotiations on the diplomatic level. So I can't announce whether we have or not. Once we have a list that has been confirmed, once we have a process that is en route, once we have the convoys that are on their way to bring them home, that is when we make our announcements through our channels after we have the confirmation that that's actually happening. At this stage, in 3:20 or 3:17 in the afternoon here in Tel Aviv, I can't report that that's the situation. As I said, we are looking to see what happens in the next few hours. Hopefully, we will have more hostages home.
Okay. What happens after the expiry of the deadline? The Prime Minister has said that the campaign to crush Hamas will continue. So what happens at 0:00 once the extension has expired? Once the deadline has expired?
So we have to, want to be very, very cautious. The IDF has two goals in this war. One is to dismantle and destroy Hamas as a governing authority and a terrorist entity. The reason being is because they utilized their power of government in order to build the terrorist army that came into our communities, into our farms, into our towns in southern Israel on 7th of October, and brutally massacred, murdered, raped, and abducted so many people into Gaza. Over 1,200 people butchered and murdered, over 240 Israelis and foreign nationals abducted. So they did that through the power of government. They had the funding, they have the knowledge, the know-how, they built their research and development capabilities, they armed themselves, and that is why the government has decided that this can never be an option again. And so the government of Hamas has to go on one hand, and their terrorist capabilities also have to go on the other hand. This goal goes hand in hand with the second goal of bringing the hostages home. So, of course, if they do not release the hostages, then the second goal will be prioritized in order to bring the hostages home. So, yes, we intend on pursuing Hamas. We intend on seeking out their leadership and making sure that they never have this power again to wield the sword of death above our heads.
Yeah. How then would you know, as the Israeli Defense Force, that now you've entirely flushed out Hamas? Do you know all of their identities, including the ones, people who may be supporters of Hamas, but not necessarily members?
So I think we need to be very, very cautious in our goals. And what I highlighted was very, very specific goals with regard to addressing Hamas as a governing authority. So, of course, we know who their terrorist forces are. We understand and know who their governing people are, from Yahya Sinwar, the prime minister of Hamas government, who is the mastermind of the massacre of 7th of October, and to all of his cronies that surround him. So, of course, there is a very well understanding of who these people are. And, of course, the infrastructure itself, the terrorist infrastructure, whether it's the rocket launchers, the staging grounds, the tunnels that they've built at the expense of the people of Gaza, at the expense of those that need it so much. Hamas receives every year $100 million support from Iran. They do not do anything for the good of the people in Gaza in all of these years. All they have done is built this terrorist infrastructure to attack Israel. So from our perspective, the goals are actually quite modest. They're not expansionist with regard to the ideology of Hamas. That is not our goal. Our goal is to improve the security situation for the people of Israel, and I would also add for the people of Gaza at the end.
Okay. Again, how many Hamas members are you looking for? And out of the 15,000 people who have died in Palestine, how many of those are members of Hamas?
So we are conducting our activities based on intelligence and responding to the threats that are developing on the field. We have several thousands of Hamas terrorists that have been killed in exchanges, either direct exchanges with our forces on the ground at different compounds of Hamas, different bastions, battalion commanders, battalion command posts, observation positions, gathering, staging grounds, these types of things. This is the places that we are hunting them down and seeking them out. Of course, these exchanges up until 3 days ago were happening extensively across the northern Gaza Strip. So that I would say is several thousands of them. The estimate of the strength of their force is around 30,000, perhaps. But this is again needs to be seen. And of course, we are operating under the understanding that this is a huge challenge for the military, and what we're trying to do is evacuate people from harm's way to get them out of the densely populated areas of northern Gaza. And indeed, we encouraged evacuation from the north and encouraged it, actively encouraged it, while Hamas was trying to discourage, threaten, and even put up physical barriers to prevent people from evacuating. So we are operating under the understanding that we have to do everything we can in order to mitigate the civilian casualties of this war. Nevertheless, it is a war forced upon us, a war that we did not want. I would say even a war that we were not prepared for. And indeed, we are very, very determined that this threat will not exist for our people ever again.
So, of the 6,150 children who were killed since the 7th of October, how many are members of Hamas?
I don't know to say that that number is actually accurate, but I will say that every child lost in this war, Israeli or Palestinian, is a human tragedy, a tragedy that could have been averted if Hamas hadn't opened war against Israel on the 7th of October. We have to be very, very careful in our operations. We have to try and minimize the civilian casualties.
Okay.
The people of Gaza are not our enemy. Hamas is everyone's enemy.
So considering that you have 6,150 children that have died since the 7th of October, will you call your campaign a success?
Well, that's an outrageous question, and the way it's posed is also extremely hostile. I would say children need to be spared, Israeli children and Palestinian children.
But they're not. So in this particular case, do you think that your operation has been a success?
So would you suggest we don't defend our people because Hamas is hiding behind theirs?
6,150 children that have died.
Are you suggesting we should not defend our people because Hamas are hiding behind Palestinians of Gaza?
So are you saying that it is correct that you go on a campaign that says that we are targeting Hamas, and if it means that 6,150 children could die, let the operation continue because the target is Hamas? And even though these children are not members of Hamas, if they die in the crossfire, they die in the crossfire. It is what it is. Is that it?
No, I'm saying that we need to listen very carefully what Hamas is saying, that given the chance, they will butcher, murder, rape, abduct Israelis again and again and again. And I'm saying Hamas have to go. We have to do everything in our power in order to mitigate and limit the civilian casualties. Unfortunately, Hamas is actually going out of their way in order to put civilians at risk. We need to do everything we can to save human life. We are facilitating humanitarian access. We are facilitating the activities of the international humanitarian organizations on the ground. Indeed, what is happening in Gaza is a human tragedy. It's a tragedy nevertheless caused by Hamas.
Human tragedy, which you equated to a genocide as well?
Hamas is a genocidal organization, that's clear.
Yeah, but what the Israeli Defense Force is doing, which you equate that to a genocide as well?
Absolutely not. How can you even consider that? That is ridiculous.
Okay, so 6,150 children that have died, and it's not a genocide. Okay, the Israeli Defense Force had said that there is an operation center that is being led by Hamas under the hospital, Al-Shifa Hospital. Did you find it?
We found extensive network of tunnels, command positions, gathering staging grounds, locations to hide in within the compound, beneath the compound, extensively, yes.
So would you say that it was a command center?
We found command capabilities, command center, communication, utilities, absolutely. We found a lot of Hamas's activities as a concept of Hamas's operations. It wasn't just under Al-Shifa Hospital. We found it in the Rantisi Hospital. We found it in the Al-Quds Hospital. We found it in the Qatari Hospital. We found it also in the Indonesian Hospital. Wherever Hamas laid their roots beneath hospitals, we are finding it, because that is how they do. That is how they're operating.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, who is the spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Force. 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker account and earn the best rates in the market. More than the top 10 money market funds' average returns. Enjoy unmatched advantages at an interest rate of 8.9% per annum. Plus, if you open your account today, you could win your share of 15 million rand in luxury travel experiences for two. Yes, you heard right. A trip for you and your partner. My bank does that. Open yours today in less than 5 minutes on the banking app, at your nearest Absa branch, or consult your private banker or call 0860 111 515. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Rand Water is concerned about the significant increase of water consumption in its areas of supply. The increase in water consumption is putting severe strain on Rand Water's distribution network. To save water, please do not wash your cars with hose pipes. Use buckets. Water your garden with sprinklers between sunset and sunrise. Do not wash your pavements with hose pipes. Use brooms. Repair your leaking taps. Cover your swimming pools to avoid quick evaporation. Shower instead of bathing in a tub.
This message is sponsored by Rand Water in partnership with City of Joburg, City of Ekurhuleni, and City of Tshwane.
The beauty, power, elegance and speed of horse racing.
The passion at the heart of horse racing diligence.
Where these magnificent creatures and their skilled jockeys compete for glory.
Racing today.
Catch it live on Mondays to Fridays on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com.
Hashtag Horses of Great Character. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Officials in Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Okay, let's take some of your voice notes on 0614-104107.
Hi, Adrian. The Israeli IDF spokesperson is talking hogwash. In the very same spirit, why Hamas attack them? Why are they consistently oppressing, subjugating, and stealing Palestinian land? I advise him to go and watch the creation of Israel. Then maybe we'll shut up. It's nonsense.
How? Aldrin Sampear. The reason why I always look forward to radio from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. The guy can't even answer a question because they are hiding behind this thing of Hamas, yet kids are dying. There's proper way to go about these things, man. Shame on leaders from both sides who can't even sit down and say, guys, there are kids, women who are dying because of our actions. This guy is trying to justify nonsense. And kudos to you for standing your ground and keep asking the question which is avoiding. I love this radio show, man. I really do. Shows both perspectives from both sides. You never choose sides. I love this about this radio show. John in Bloemfontein.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, John. It's 3:30. Time for the news headlines.
Thanks, Aldrin. Good afternoon. For SFM News, I'm Mphosa Tole. In your headlines, Water and Sanitation Minister Senzo Mchunu says they're working on tackling water challenges at the Madibeng local municipality in the northwest. Residents in the municipality have been struggling to access clean drinking water for several years. And in the Free State, the Mangaung Metro Municipality and Vaal Central Water say they're working around the clock to ensure full restoration around Bloemfontein, Botshabelo and Tabanchu. It follows the prolonged water interruptions that the municipality has been experiencing since last week. And in other news, Action SA leader Herman Mashaba is blaming a lack of political will on the governing party to resolve the problem of undocumented migrants in the country. Mashaba says there is still an influx of undocumented foreign nationals and corruption at ports of entry. I have these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a couple of issues to watch for on Gauteng's highways. If you're driving south from Sandton down towards Central Joburg, a crash near Houghton Drive. The Mike 1 pushing delays back through to the Melrose area. And a collision on the N12 westbound ramp to the N1 North. Some queuing pressure into that scene at the Deep Cliff interchange. Just come through from sort of Southgate. Want to turn up towards Soweto. That's where that queuing pressure is. Busy one with trucks queuing up again at Mpangeni, just north of the R34 John Ross Highway. The trucks are queuing towards the Richards Bay exit and towards Nsileni. So both sides under pressure there. And Cape Town, a collision on Jan Smuts Drive. It's between Viking Way and the N2 highway that is causing delays both directions between the highway and the Epping Old Mutual area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
Good afternoon, Tumi. What's coming up?
Well, we'll start things off with football, hearing from three-time CAF Champions League champion Pitso Mosimane saying that he will only join a club that's worthy of missing family time for. Now, Mosimane has been linked with several clubs since he departed Al-Wada, with Kaizer Chiefs and Zamalek being top of the list. However, he says that his next dream job would be one that can give him a chance to win the Africa Cup of Nations and qualify for the FIFA World Cup. The 56-year-old also says that firing coaches to appease fans is not always the best way to help the club get better results.
It was all or nothing. Arteta would have never survived in many countries. He lost 4 games in a row. What does that mean? 4 games in a row? First, in the Gulf, you're out. Okay? South Africa, you're out. You know yourself. Okay? But look at where Arsenal is today, top of the log. Last year, they came second. Do you give Arteta a chance? Do you have the plan? Or you are results-based per week, every week, what? And people complain and everybody says whatever. People will always say their opinion. Supporters love their clubs. They will say.
Then Kaizer Chiefs interim head coach Kevin Johnson has played down allegations of racial tensions within the club. This is after reports this past weekend that players were divided along racial lines at the club. According to a report in Sunday World, black players claim that coloured players are treated better by the club's management. However, Johnson says that they don't have any racial tensions in their camp. And these allegations came in the wake of disciplinary problems with club captain Itumile Nkune, currently suspended suspended and facing a disciplinary hearing tomorrow after he was tested for alcohol at training last week. Moving on to rugby news, Bulls director of rugby, Jake White, says that he can't believe the fortune of having two-time Rugby World Cup winner Willie Leroux in their books. Leroux made his debut in this weekend's 53-27 thrashing of Connacht in the United Rugby Championship, but it was the seasoned boxer precise kicking coupled with a clear vocal leadership style that set him apart, and that's according to White more than his try in the 8-3 try fest at Loftus Versfeld. There's much healthy experience and also dilemma up front for White, but he's confident that it not only aids the growth of URC, but it's better for the country's rugby structures.
Every guy in the forward pack except Reinhard Ludwig's played for South Africa. It's incredible. It's a great step for the Bulls. And Reinhard Ludwig is captain the under-20s. So the most inexperienced forwards captain the SA under-20 side. So having World Cup winners back, having Springboks in your team is something I've been pushing since I got here. We need to have international players playing for South Africa because it makes it so much better for the audience, better for the product.
Then moving on to cricket, after the opening two matches of the Cricket South Africa 4-day domestic series, Tuskers head coach Ahmed Amla believes that there are plenty of positives to draw on the ongoing campaign. The Tuskers lost their opening to the defending champion Dolphins before drawing a weather-affected match against Western Province. The next assignment is an away fixture against Northwest and Potchefstroom, and heading into that match, Amla has had time to reflect on their opening games and is positive that they're heading into the right direction as a team. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Dumen Khabele.
Ford is turning 100, and there's never been a better time to buy a brand new Ford. We're giving away 100 vouchers worth an amazing 50,000 Rand each, and the sensational grand prize of us paying for one lucky winner's Ford. It's the celebration of the century. Visit a Ford dealer, buy a new Ford, and win. T&Cs apply.
The Northwest Provincial Legislature Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment and Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will conduct public hearings on Northwest Gambling Amendment Bill 2022 and Northwest Consumer Affairs Bill 2019 on 28 November 2023 at Barolombo Ratloubakasitsilo Community Hall in Kunwana, Kakala Community Hall in New Doornstad, Kesmet Hall in Vryburg, and Moretele Community Hall in Moretele. All public hearings start at 10.
Dressing up is a winning mentality.
If you look good, you do good.
You feel good too.
Big ups to Polo South Africa
for making the SABC Sport team look good during the Rugby World Cup France 2023. Class and style on another level.
Rolez-vous.
Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies invites interested individuals and stakeholders to submit written comments on the SABC bill. The bill seeks to repeal the Broadcasting Act of 1999 to regulate continued existence of the SABC, to provide for its governance, to amend the ICASA Act of 2000 and the Electronic Communications Act of 2005. For more information, contact the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies by emailing sabcbill@parliament.gov.za. That's sabcbill@parliament.gov.za, directed to Hajira Sali. The closing date for written submissions is Friday, the 15th of December 2023 at 4:30 p.m.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
Hi, Adrian. It is Major speaking from Kotama in Springs. Look, the IDF spokesperson is talking utterly nonsense. Utterly nonsense. The end game in Palestine, it was to clean out Palestinians. So because of this international outcry, they're pulling back. None of them says about the two-state solution. None of them talks about pulling out from the occupied land. No one. The struggle of the Palestinians must continue, and nobody must dictate to them how they should conduct the struggle. Sure.
Dear Aldrin Sampear, I don't know how you remained calm in front of such blatant lies and dishonesty. Guys, I mean, at some point we have to sit back and say, Hitler got to 6 million because of people who refused to acknowledge that Hitler was committing a genocide. And now we are sitting at 15,000. At what point do we then, as a world, collectively say, guys, this is going to get to 6 million? Maybe that when we get to 6 million, then the Israelis can then start seeing what, hey, my actions are not as different to the ones of the Nazis. Because, I mean, they were also calling them all sorts of names to justify. And, just like Benjamin Netanyahu was allowed in America, Hitler was also Times Man of the Year back in the day. So we can draw very strong parallels.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 20 minutes now before 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with David Matsanga, who's a political analyst and expert on diplomatic relations. Calm has restored in Sierra Leone following an attack on a military barracks in the capital city, Freetown, yesterday. We understand that the country's nighttime curfew has also been lifted. However, though, the political situation in the West African nation has remained tense since President Bio's re-election in a disputed election in June. Joining us now to explain what's behind these tensions, David Matsanga, political analyst and expert on diplomatic relations. David, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, all of you. Good afternoon, the entire African continent and the globe listening to us.
What should we read into what happened here over the weekend?
I predicted this on this same station or your sister station about these coups in Africa. In West Africa, I told one of your presenters that this is not the end of the coups in West Africa. There are more. Because of elections, because of disputed elections. Disputed elections in Africa, in West Africa especially, are breeding quite a lot of violence. And it is high time that we looked at what is it that Africa needs. Does it need elections? Does it need poorly managed elections? Where there is nobody who concedes in Africa, but all people are winners, and the winners don't even look at who have lost. They don't give dignity except like the question of Liberia.
So in this particular case, considering that the election happened in June, there were disputes over the election, at what point does Sierra Leone then reach a stage to say that perhaps if that it would be the case, to say that President Bio has been legitimately elected and therefore he must continue with his presidency?
The youth, apart from South Africa and another country in Africa, Tanzania, part of the problem of Africa is elections, and I've told you. And these elections create problems, tension among security agencies, create tension in the army, create tension in the police. Entire security agencies, you can see Nigeria. You saw what was taking place in Nigeria. If you find an army which is not a professional, you might have a lot of problems. So this is what Africa should chew first. At what stage the West African state, Sierra Leone, can find an amicable solution. It's a redemption strategy. When you have got a redemption strategy on place, when you have got the tenets, the values, the efforts that unite a country, put them on table, discuss and say, this is our nation. What do we do as Sierra Leoneans? What can we do? Where did we go wrong? Because most of these electoral commissions in Africa are selected by the people sitting president. They are elected by presidents in power. Judges in Africa. Look at the question of Nigeria, the bigger democracy, the bigger population in Africa, my brother. The president selects the judges who even passed. They pass the judgment before they even read it or before they even hear it. So these are some of the bottlenecks of our democracy in Africa. And the one of Sierra Leone is part of that.
It is because President Bio has said that some of the leaders of the unrest have now been arrested. But is the state apparatus the right approach to deal with the concern that has been raised around the dispute over the election? So you have the state, of course, that is going to deploy its armed forces to push against these protesters and the unrest that has taken place.
I am telling you, is just making the situation worse by arresting all opposition leaders and anybody who has got sentiments of that nature. He's a very good friend of the Commonwealth. I want to give him free advice. Let him start what we call a redemption strategy. This is a redemption strategy that Dr. Matsanga grew up in Uganda. A redemption strategy when we saw that the war in Uganda was going to be difficult to be won by one side. People were dying. I put a redemption strategy in Juba in 2008. It has grown up and so many African states in the world, in Africa, are taking a reconciliatory mood towards uniting the people. You see, the same is happening across in the northern border of your place, where the opposition are saying, hey, can we sit down and talk and find out a way out? But if it goes to use a government apparatus, instruments to beat people, to torture people, to allege, to put, is just making the situation bad. One general will come out, or captain will finish him one, and this is not what Africa wants. He's not going to manage. And that is all. The election was contestable. Election was not contentious issue. Election must be resolved by political arrangement, political discussion, not through threats, not through arrests, not through torture of friends. You remember, Sierra Leone is one of the countries which created a very big nuclear survey war in West Africa, where Liberia was sucked in. And this is a fragile state, brother, that we don't want to lose.
Thank you so much for your time. David Matsanga, political analyst and expert on diplomatic relations there.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Afternoon, Andren. This is Magdalene from Bloom.
Liratodi, good afternoon.
Aldrin, how are you?
Let's hear from Tandisa joining us from Matlosana. Good afternoon.
Edwin, how are you?
Aldrin.
Who?
It's Aldrin.
Excuse me. My name is what? My name is my name is my name is what? My name is
Aldrin Sampear.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hashtag SFMBTH.
My name is what? My name is who? My name is what? My name is who? My name is Aldrin Sampear.
My daughter is loving Aldrin Sampear. Enjoy your show, man.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It's 13 minutes now before 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Pearl Makubani, SABC News reporter on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. So Sergeant Vusumuzi Mukhane has been questioned why he left out crucial evidence when he testified at the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. Within the trial, Mukhane is back in the witness box at the High Court in Pretoria to give clarity on the vehicle tracking report. Mukhane was being cross-examined by Defense Bakwena Munyeki, who is standing in for Advocate Zandile Mshololo. Munyeki asked Mukhane why he never mentioned a mechanical breakdown in his evidence in chief. Also, there was a scuffle in the Pretoria High Court between the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial and one of the prison wardens. Just quickly listen to this exchange that happened between the prison warders as well as some of the accused, and then Paul Makubani will give us more context.
She's on more, guys.
And that recording of that scuffle by our reporter, Criselda Lewis. But Pearl Makubani now joining us to give us more context around this. Pearl, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. What happened there during the tea break?
Good afternoon, Aldrin Sampear and the listeners. Well, when we had a short tea adjournment, accused number 4 was leaning on the bench, like sitting on top of the bench. And the prison warder made a remark to say that he needs to sit properly. And as he got closer, then they started howling insults at him, saying that Sizokshaya Tina, meaning we're going to beat you up. And as he tried to get closer, one of the accused just threw a left jab there, and it was just a short scuffle. And before the other prison warder stepped forward to intervene, and other members of court, and he says that according to him, when he took the stand, just to explain to Judge Ratamu Kgotleng, who was not present at the time, he says that he was just merely exercising his rights and, doing his job, which is to ensure that the prisoners sit correctly throughout the court proceedings. And Judge Mokgotleng didn't want to make a ruling, just gave them, just a warning to say, you need to behave yourselves all the time, whether he is in court or not. And, such things happen, and the prison warder is supposed to work, because there have been incidences where people have escaped from court, and therefore if he sees something that feels uncomfortable or should not be happening, he has every right to reprimand the accused in the cells.
Okay, and let's look at the defense lawyer there, Advocate Munyeki, and him cross-examining Mokhane, who's back on the stand. What was at the core of the defense's case here?
Well, Mokhane was merely called back just to give clarity on where his car went. His cross-examination was stood down so that they could allow the tracking expert to come, as he could not recall the names of the areas and exactly. So what the expert did was literally to zoom into the map, specifying whether it was industrial and residential area and so forth. But what he was asked by Miki was that you never mentioned that you had a mechanical breakdown when you were near an engine garage. In fact, he never mentioned that there was a stop close to an engine garage, as per accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi's version. And that only came out when the AVL report was handed in court. And only then he gave an explanation to say that there was a breakdown, and one of the Ekurhuleni Metro Police officers did help him. And he sticks by his story, saying that he did mention it, so therefore he doesn't see what the big deal is. But he was just called there, just briefly, just to clarify that part. And then we moved on to other aspects of the case, that being the lead investigating officer, who has been called to the stand.
Yeah, and finally, the state has called a new witness, Vishen Singh. What is his contribution or link to the case?
Vishen Singh really is a supervisor in the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department. All he came to do was just to clarify that the cold case unit under Gininda and Mokhane that they work under, they usually call them to help with high-profile cases, that being the escorting of the prisoners and the police officers themselves. And he was just mentioning their function. He was unable to assist the court in remembering the vehicles that the officers that were called to work in following Bongani Ntanzi's arrest in June 2020, saying that it was a long time ago. He couldn't recall. But he was just mainly there just to explain the functions and their relationship between Ekurhuleni, the SWAT team, which has since been disbanded, and the cold case unit.
Thank you so much for your time. Pearl Makubani, SABC News reporter there on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
We're in conversation next with Professor Kangelani Zuma, who is a divisional executive in the Public Health Societies and Belonging PHSB Research Division at the Human Science Research Council. So, new HIV survey shows that the percentage of all people living with HIV in South Africa has decreased from 14% in 2017 to 12% in 2022. Also, according to the survey, HIV prevalence was nearly twice as high among women by race. It was the highest among Black Africans, sitting at around 20%. Professor Zuma now joining us on the line. Prof, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sampear.
Let's start off with some of the highlights of the report, noting that there has been a decline in the prevalence of HIV amongst the population. What is this attributed to, or could there be a possibility at all that if we look at the the ratio of 100,000 or per capita, for instance, that the reason why we have this decline is because the population has actually grown?
It could be also part of that. But mainly it's due to more people having access to antiretroviral treatment, as the results show that if you compare the 2017 survey to 22 survey, we see, especially among people younger than 35 years, that actually in 2022, the prevalence curve is much lower in 2022 compared to the prevalence curve that we saw in 2017 from age 0 up to 39 years. So that's more people, that's fewer new infections that are coming in. But of course, because more people are on ARVs, more people having antiretrovirals and their viral load undetectable, we find that there are also more people who are born HIV negative, which is now attributed to the population growth that leads to the decline in HIV prevalence. So it's a bit of both.
Okay, and when we look at the prevalence by age group, you see the 25 to 49-year-olds, they have the highest prevalent rate of HIV. But between the ages of 0 to 14 and 15 to 24, they almost seem to be on par. You have 1.9% to 3.2% and then 4.5% to 6%. So it almost seems that the number there remains the same. That all of a sudden, once we reach the 25 to 49 age group, it then just peaks at a double digits at that.
Yeah. And that actually makes sense, Mr. Sampear, because remember that the problem that we have, younger people, you find that most of them who are HIV positive actually don't know their HIV status, and they are not on treatment, which is a problem on its own. So they are not as virally suppressed as they should be, as the results show that they are the least that are virally suppressed. But when you come to those that are 25 years and above, you'd find that these are within the reproductive age group also, and most of them are more likely to know their HIV status and having been put on treatment. So the increase in those numbers could actually be also attributed to people living longer with HIV, so that is now the mortality that has been cut out by putting people on treatment. So, however, the increase, as you pick it up, there are still cases of new infections as you compare. In the previous survey, it was 26.3. In the new survey, it's 22.1. It has gone down, but there are still new infections in that age group also.
And then if we look by gender, why is it the case that women almost seems to be more vulnerable and the highest level of prevalence is found amongst women if we look at gender? One of my colleagues was actually saying that she thinks that one of the reasons is because you'd find more women who would be willing to go and test compared to men.
Yes. But to counteract that, we're looking at proportions. So the base is percentages. So the base is actually 100%. So it doesn't matter that we've got more women, but the percentage would actually, we compare the same denominator in this case. Now, to come back to answer your question would be that, one, we know that the risk of HIV transmission from male to female is much higher than the other way around. The other second thing is, it starts from young women, 15 to 24-year-old, who actually, if you look at their HIV prevalence, is comparable to males who are 10 years older than them. We find that there is a group of young girls having sexual contact with older males. And in those relationships, there is lack of condom use because of power dynamics, and those young women get to be infected with HIV, and it goes throughout across because they grow over the years. So the problem of intergenerational sex is one of the big challenges that we still face as a society. And also the fact that in those relationships, there is lack of condom use. And also, as you see the young women all along, the power dynamics, and also the transmission of HIV from males to females, those are the things that contribute to HIV infection higher among women than men. So we still need to address that, especially among older males that have sexual contact with younger women.
And when it comes to race, again, black Africans carry the highest prevalence, 19.8%, so that's close to around the 20%. And when you look at the other race groups, they are in single digits. What are we seeing here?
Again, it's not about race, it's not the color of one's skin that is the risk factor for HIV, but it is the risk behavior. It's the behavior that's associated with that is common in that particular race group. And you will see, I mean, this is just a reflection of what we're seeing in the results now. In April, launching a big report that also shows behavioral information, detailed behavioral information. We have seen in previous studies that there are sexual practices, the multiple sexual partnerships, and other related sexual behavior that is more common in one race group than the other, and that risk behavior is the one that is the picture of HIV. So that is the problem that we need to deal with. At this moment, we see the statistics about HIV, and the next step now is to delve deeper into the behavioral information that will explain why do we see these racial differences.
Thank you so much for your time, Professor Kangela Nizuma, the Divisional Executive in the Public Health Societies and Belonging Research Division in the Human Sciences Research Council. And of course, this research comes just a couple of days before the world marks World AIDS Day. It's a minute after 4 o'clock, time for the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top stories at this hour. Mkhunu tackles Northwest water shortages and calls for continued Israel-Hamas ceasefire intensify. Good afternoon. For SAFM News, I'm Mphosa Thole. Now, Water and Sanitations Minister Senzo Mkhunu says they're working on tackling the water challenges at Madibeng local municipality in the northwest. Residents living there have been struggling to access clean drinking water for several years. He was speaking at the centenary celebrations of the Hartebeespoort Dam. Mkhunu says 27 water projects are being rolled out in the northwest, including Madibeng, which has many idle boreholes.
But we were in touch with the mayor, I think 3 days ago, wherein we said the mayor must give us the state of water in Brett because there are several boreholes that are no longer functional now. We want to look at that. So Brett's people in this municipality, they must know we are tackling their issues and
And in the Free State, the Mangaung Metro Municipality and Vaal Central Water say they're working around the clock to ensure full water restoration around Bloemfontein, Botshabelo and Tabanchu. This follows the prolonged interruptions that the municipality has been experiencing since last week. Metro spokesperson Kondile Ketana says in some areas, like Tabanchu, they're still building capacity of reservoirs as demand is very high. Ketama adds that the water tankers are being dispatched to reach many of the affected areas. He says the Bromfisher building will be closed up until tomorrow as a result of the water shortages. In other news, Action SA leader Herman Mashaba is blaming a lack of political will on the governing party to resolve the problem of undocumented migrants in the country. Mashaba says there is still an influx of undocumented foreign nationals and corruption at points of entry. He says if his party is voted into power after next year's elections, it will tighten the immigration laws and increase security at the borders. Mashaba was conducting an oversight visit at the Beitbridge border post in Musina, Limpopo.
We need, as South Africa, first is the political will. Secondly, we as Action SA, we are saying we need to really be brutal to punish those who breach the laws of our country. Those who put our country's future on the market, on sale, in being involved with corruption. Because this is actually, this crisis we're sitting with is as a result of the level of corruption that has been happening.
KwaZulu-Natal is the province with the highest HIV prevalence in the country. That's according to the latest statistics from the Human Sciences Research Council. The HSRC, in collaboration with its partners, has announced the key findings from the 6th South African National HIV Prevalence, Incidence and Behaviour Survey. The country is known to have the world's largest HIV epidemic. HSRC Executive Director Kangelani Zuma says a total of 7.8 million people in the country were living with HIV in 2022.
The distribution of HIV prevalence in the country among those that are 15 years and above, we can see that the provinces such as KwaZulu-Natal, Free State, Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga still have the highest prevalence of HIV, ranging from 18.7 to 21.8. And then provinces in Northern Cape, Western Cape still have low HIV prevalence between 8.2 and 11.6. So that is the distribution of HIV in the country by province. KwaZulu-Natal is still leading on the prevalence of HIV.
Let's move on to the latest on a developing international story. NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg has joined calls for the Israel-Hamas ceasefire to continue to allow more hostages to be released. Palestinian authorities say Qatar, Egypt, the United States and the European Union are working towards an extension. The EU's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, says the long-term future of the region has to be considered.
Much more is needed to alleviate the dire situation in Gaza and to find a way out of the current crisis. A Palestinian state in Gaza, in the West Bank and East Jerusalem is the best and only long-term guarantee for Israel's security. There will not be peace or security for Israel without a Palestinian state.
And in recapping the top story at this hour, Water and Sanitation's Minister, Senzo Mchunu, says they're working on tackling the water challenges at the Madibeng local municipality in the northwest. I'll have your headlines at 4:30.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Kolisi admits to nerves as first racing run, and five-time Olympic champion Kenny targets fourth games. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Reasonably heavy on Joburg's N3 North today. A breakdown before Giluli's interchange. Traffic parking back through towards the M2 Heldenace interchange. Also a collision on the N3 South near Marlborough Drive. That is pushing traffic back towards the N1 Buccleuch interchange. And a bit of traffic jamming through Midrand between Allendale and the New Road exit. Northern parts of KZN, just watch for that truck congestion on the N2 around Mpangeni. It has been causing delays both directions to straight through traffic today, to all traffic, sort of between Seleni and Mpangeni, but just north of the R34 John Ross Highway is where you'll experience the stationary truck backlog. And to Cape Town, no traffic lights on Baden-Powell Drive at the N2, plus a collision scene driving north, so coming up from Jafta Masemola from the Khayelitsha side towards Stellenbosch. That section of Baden-Powell under a bit of pressure. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Dressing up is a winning mentality.
If you look good, you do good.
You feel good too.
Big ups to Polo South Africa
for making the SABC Sport team look good during the Rugby World Cup France 2023. Class and style on another level.
Rolez-vous.
Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children campaign. This year, be an activist. Play your part. Do not protect abusers. Report them. Hashtag No to GBVF. SAFM, leading the conversation. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
It is 8 minutes after 4 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, we're in conversation with the spokesperson for the Buffalo City Metro, that is Samkelo Ngwenya, to speak about the concerns that have been raised about the Metro's salary bill and also now the overtime salary bill has skyrocketed to 35.4 million rand in just 3 months. So we'll be speaking about that. And then at 4:20, we speak to Mike Bolhuis, who is the owner and head of Specialized Security Services, specializing in serious violent crimes. As we look at the data that has been released by a tracker, which shows that hijackings still account for the majority of vehicle-related crimes. So that conversation coming up. Also, they say that on Fridays, that's where most hijackings are likely to take place. And then on Saturdays, that's when more car thefts are likely to take place. So that conversation coming up with Mike Bolhuis at around 4:20. And then at 4:45, we speak to Megan Friedman, who is the mother of Mighty Mac, who has gone through a life-changing cell transplant. So that conversation is going to happen at around 4:45. 0614 104 107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
4:10. 4:10.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Well, it is 10 minutes after 4 o'clock, and we're off to Buffalo City, where we speak to the spokesperson of the Metro, Samkelo Ngwenya. So Buffalo City Metro's staff overtime bill has skyrocketed to around 35.4 million rand in just 3 months, causing the financially strapped municipality to impose restrictions on overtime compensation as creditors closed the taps. Last Thursday, some traffic officers complained that their municipal petrol cards had been declined at the filling station. To talk to us about the municipality's financial situation, Samkelo Ngwenya now joining us on the line. Samkelo, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Afternoon, Aldrin, and to the listeners of SAFM. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Can we just get clarity around the overtime salaries that some have been paid and some are still outstanding? What's the story here?
Well, the main story is that we are in a financial difficulty and we're scrutinizing everything that we feel is giving us a strain. And amongst the things that we've identified is the fact that our overtime bill is far excessive and it's causing cash flow problems. Chief amongst these issues is the fact that our collection rate is quite low from our targeting. So what we've done is we've met with our unions and we've met with the staff and directorates, and we've told everyone on board that we need to change the situation, and there is no overtime that will be just accepted without proper tight and controls, and that's what's taking place right now. We are scrutinizing every application, and we're no longer just paying for the sake of paying. There needs to be thorough justification, and we think that's one of the reasons why there are these stories floating.
Yeah. So what is it that you have picked up from your end while now going through what you say, making sure that you thoroughly look at who should be paid, what specific amount should be paid? What's the concern that has been raised by the municipality, or what is it that you have picked up? The Daily Dispatch is reporting that there are some people who have been paid and some haven't been paid as yet.
Well, if you look at the pattern, our overtime bill has been sitting at a reasonable figure, by our standards, 12 million, 11 million between August and October. But we picked up that has almost doubled in the last month. Firstly, it's important that essential workers are approved overtime, because we cannot do without people like your traffic officers and as well as people that are doing the type of work. But it has been picked up that there are employees who are actually using overtime as a means of compensation by not doing the actual work during working hours to actually try and do it at off hours. So those are some of the areas that we're picking up. There's a level of abuse in that space. Also, in terms of management, the tightness of the controls. We're looking in terms of who's submitting overtime, when is it submitted, and are people working for the right hours? And we're trying to clamp down on that. Hence, we've said to the unions, we need them on board, because without them and their members cooperating, we're not going to be able to reduce this bill and actually have the municipality on afloat.
Yeah. What's your target?
Well, currently right now, if you look at in terms of what we owed, the Metro is owed 6.9 billion by residents that are not paying. If you look in terms of our collection rate, we are at 62% instead of the 82%. And then if you look in terms of overtime, we're sitting at a very, very, very high millions of rands. So we are hoping that we're going to go back to the normal. I'm calling it normal. It's not normal, but it is to the manageable figures that I was raising earlier on. And we think that by going through each and every invoice, each and every payment, we should be able to do that in the next month or so.
Yeah. So is the average overtime bill at around 11 million?
That's the average.
That's the average. So what happened last month?
Well, we think that there's a number of things, but also the issue of control. At this stage, we know which departments are responsible for how we actually got to this stage. So we're sitting down with them. We're trying to look at who's being paid what and how is it being paid. Of course, you also have political offices who it's very difficult to actually manage on how they work, and we're also trying to find situations on that. And lastly, there are people that are getting paid overtime who can be compensated on other means like days off and so forth. So we're looking at making sure that we narrow it and we limit it to essential users only and those departments that are needed.
Yeah. So by how much did it increase last month?
Well, we're sitting at 35 billion, the type of bill. So it's actually doubled to up to 22 million. And we feel that that's quite excessive.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That is the spokesperson for the Buffalo City Metro, Samkelo Ungwenya. 0614-104-107. You can also drop us an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
#SAFMBTH.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and SAFM listeners. This is Silas from Johannesburg. This Israeli guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I like when you kept on pressing him that does 6,100 children death, does it not constitute genocide? By the way, he's saying, if I got him right, 29 children who died, or the Israeli children who died, is a genocide. 6,100 and plus of Palestinian children who died is not genocide. Come on, man.
Aldrin, my man. Aldrin, you are our king. You gave him a question, he was stuck, man. He was stuck. Man, they are doing something very stupid, these guys. He can't even respond to your important question about the children. He can't even do that. No, kudos, Adrian, man. I always look for you interviewing guys. You're good, man. Keep it up.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for the feedback. Francis is joining us from East London. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm well, Francis. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Mister, the spokesperson of the IDF.
Yeah.
She was very firm to answer those the questions that you are asking. So it's like you majored on the issue of children, regardless of those other people those other civilians who died. Hamas, it is their nature. They planned it to say that if the Israelis, we provoke them like they did on the 7th, they are going to hide behind the civilians. They are going to put children in front of them, so that if Israel is coming against them, then the whole world will wake up and condemn Israel for their crime against humanity, for killing children and women and those people that cannot move as they did. They have been doing it years and years. For those of us who have been following the actions of Hamas, we know them. The actions of Hezbollah, we know them. Now, come to the issue of children. I go to what Russia believes in. Russia believes in total destruction and conquer. This is the theory that Israel is also doing. It's about take the bush and kill the enemy. So if Hamas is hiding behind the civilians, it's better you take all of them, because the aim is to deal with the civilians. The aim is to deal with the enemy who is hiding in the bush, and in this case, the bush is the civilians.
So even if it means killing the children,
no, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Why? Okay, Hamas. If Hamas is very responsible, why are they putting children in front?
No, Francis.
No,
Francis, it doesn't matter that you're going to kill around 6,000 children,
Okay,
or let's just
I'm
say 6,000 children are dying in this crossfire, and
Mhm.
you're saying that it doesn't matter as long
Okay,
as long as you are going to make sure that you get the enemy. So the 6,000 children who die in the meantime, you couldn't be bothered by that.
No, the aim of Israel was not to take the children. But if Hamas was responsible, why couldn't they avoid that?
But
from
why
hiding from the
are you
children?
expecting from Hamas to be responsible?
Okay, do you respect Hamas?
No. This is not about me and my opinions about Hamas. Why do you expect of Hamas to be responsible?
They should be responsible.
You've already said that they are irresponsible, right? What happened on the 7th of October, somebody would argue that it was irresponsible. So why do you think that when you are now going to defend yourself, that now all of a sudden you think that the conscience will now appear in Hamas's mind and say that, oh, let's make sure that we protect the children?
Okay,
You've already concluded that they are...
Have you ever asked Hamas leaders or spokesperson to say, why are you hiding behind the children or behind the civilians?
You must
Have
listen to
ever
the
asked
show.
those
You must listen to the show more often.
Okay.
You clearly don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's quickly go to Luandle, who's joining us from Gqeberha. Good afternoon. Hi, Luandle.
Hey, hi, Elton. Can you hear me?
Good. I can hear you, Luandle.
Yes. Man, I thought that interview was the greatest.
Oh, Luandle,
Yeah,
I'm struggling to
obviously.
hear you here.
Can you hear me now?
If you can
Elton?
try and speak up a bit, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay. It's much better. Sure.
Well, I just wanted to say that the interview that you did, was quite fantastic. It was quite fantastic because I don't think that the IDF spokesperson was able to hide. Right, he was not able to hide. What I just wanted to say, though, that I respect our government's stance on the issue of the Middle East crisis. Because our foreign relations stance to this never forget that there is an occupation happening there. Everybody else who's supporting Israel wants us to forget about the international law which is being broken by the settlement of Israelis on the land of Palestine.
Luandle, I'm so sorry. The line isn't clear. I'm really, really sorry. We're going to try and see maybe if we can try and get you back a bit later on. But let's quickly take a break. 0614-104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Get ready for an adventure of a lifetime with SABC TV Licenses Ultimate Competition. Feel the pulse-pounding excitement of a Bundesliga match live on an all-expenses-paid journey you'll never forget. Or embrace the rhythm of your dreams at the Coachella Music Festival. The choice is yours. A football fan's paradise or a music lover's haven. Simply pay your TV license, then head to www.winnerholidayWithSABCTVLicenses.co.za for a chance to win big. And don't forget, there are incredible weekly prizes up for grabs too. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Manene namanenekazi.
Dove is not just gentle and moisturizing.
It took great care of the nation.
During the Rugby World Cup France 2023, Dove rocks just like the box.
Danko Unilever for your remarkable contribution to the momentous journey of global heroes.
Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
It is 23 minutes after 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Mike Bolhuis, who is the owner and head of Specialized Security Services, which specializes in serious violent crime. So Tracker released its most recent vehicle crime statistics just in time for the holidays, revealing that hijackings continue to account for the majority of vehicle crime incidents. It also provides information on the day of the week and the time of the day when you are most likely to have your car stolen or to become a victim of a hijacking. Mike Bolhuis is now joining us on the line. Mike, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.
Who's the clients, who's the customers of these cars that are being hijacked?
Mostly businessmen, Nate. Mostly businessmen. So it has, I won't say it has changed, but it's always been businessmen and business vehicles that have been the targets. There's about a 10% difference. It's usually because inside jobs is the cause of it. It's easier to arrange such a theft with outside syndicates and orders. And then usually there's also goods to the value of that could be taken. And what we've recently seen is what's not mentioned here is what we call a massive hijacking and hold of trucks. We have recently, in the last week, my task team had been fully involved in an operation where about 400 truck vehicles were kept nationwide by hijackers, say drivers, say holding the vehicles with demands and refusing to return the vehicles with the goods, it was coal, unless the company meet their demands. So that does also happen now, and that's a very, very, very big concern.
Okay. So in terms of the vehicles, though, the ones that are hijacked, who do they get resold to, or what is the modus operandi around after the car has been hijacked? What happens to the car?
Look, there'll always be a business for stolen cars because you have another side in our country which is also criminal, and that is authorities being involved assisting with bogus paperwork, and also authorities being involved in the sense of when they pull you over, 100 or 200 rand can do the trick. So as long as that is in place, vehicles will be stolen and kept in South Africa or taken outside to neighboring countries. So there are thousands of all kinds of Toyotas in Mozambique and other neighboring countries. And some of them are even taken further up in Africa. So order theft basically means if they, like of late, would want cruisers, SUVs, specifically Toyotas, Bakkies, they'll go out these syndicates and they'll scour areas, and they have teams that just hijack the vehicles. And hijacking has become very easy in South Africa, especially over weekends, because people are still, by the end of the week, a bit careless and not positively paranoid enough to be aware. And it can happen day and night, in broad daylight, in sight of everybody around you. People are scared. They don't get out. They know these criminals shoot. They all have guns. And they take advantage of the situation that if they jump out of a car to take another vehicle, they can just randomly shoot. And if you're in the area and you try and stop it, they know that you cannot just shoot because you might shoot people behind them.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that people would get a tracker service, for instance, installed on their cars is so that the car could be easily found if hijacked or stolen. But why hasn't it really become such a major deterrent?
Look, they sometimes, and not sometimes, they have inside information, and they have devices and jamming devices. And the criminal of today is not sitting back and seeing the technology getting better and better. And I believe in trackers. I believe it should be 2 to 3 in expensive vehicles, medium expensive vehicles, at least 2. Microchip tracking that you can't find or pick up with devices. I actually believe in the future where a vehicle is completely controlled by an outside unit that can stop the vehicle and bring the vehicle back, steer it right back to its owner or to its business. But the criminals of today, we're not there yet though, the criminals of today is just, seeing what's going on, and then they adapt and they deal with it. And they have, as we always say, anything God creates for good, Satan will use for evil. So the criminals will have something in hand that can assist them to bypass the tracking.
So you say you still believe in a tracker service. Is it value for money though? If I pay a monthly premium and all I could get at the end of the month or when my car is stolen or hijacked is, well, we can't find it and insurance will now have to pay out.
Yes, it is definitely a deterrent. The sophisticated criminals will
will assume that most cars have trackers, but some trackers are very difficult to find, so they'll bypass those, and that's why they're concentrating the more sophisticated syndicates on business vehicles, because it's a double whammy. They can easily, as I've said, infiltrate a business, a driver. They can easily manipulate it, intimidating, take the stock, and whatever. But trackers is an absolute yes, and it's a demand for insurance companies. Insurance companies would not insecure your vehicle unless you have a tracker inside. What I do think should change is the kind of tracking devices. I believe the vehicle in itself should become the tracking device itself.
Okay.
So in other words, the parts in the car is equipped with microchips, that car could be followed literally like you see in the spy movies. No matter what they do or what jamming device they try, you will find the vehicle.
Thank you so much for your time. Mike Bolhayes, their owner and head of specialized security services, specializing in serious violent crimes. So considering that you have this high rate of car hijackings and cars being stolen, do you think it is really value for money? My other thing is that, sure, the insurance company would say that you must have a tracker fitted onto your car, and that will somehow reduce the premium that you pay. But then, of course, you still have to pay for the services of the tracker device that is installed in your car. And once the car is stolen, gone, hijacked, and you can't find it anymore, and you claim from your insurance, that's it. That is it. So can we really say that it is value for money? 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Good afternoon. For SAFM News, I'm Mphosa Tole. In your headlines, the DA says it's been vindicated after the High Court in Johannesburg dismissed the city's appeal over the appointment of Floyd Brink as city manager. Brink was appointed by the Joburg Council in February, despite not passing the vetting requirements. In other news, a survey released by the Human Sciences Research Council has highlighted progress made toward ending HIV in South Africa. The HSRC, in collaboration with partners, has announced key findings from the 6th South African National HIV Prevalence, Incidence and Behaviour Survey. And the Pietermaritzburg High Court has sentenced a 22-year-old man to 2 terms of life imprisonment for the rape and murder of a 4-year-old girl at Harding in southern KwaZulu-Natal. Now, this incident occurred in September. Songezo Mpula pleaded guilty to the charges. Greg Hosts will have your full news bulletin at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And let's get a traffic update with Rob Byrne. Good afternoon.
Yeah, very good afternoon. The M1 North through Midrand looking busy today from Buccleuch up to New Road before you get a move on. The M1 South Buccleuch down to the Winnie Mandela off-ramp in Four Ways looking quite busy as well. Durban, just watch for some load-shedding delays around Phoenix and also Sparks and Musgrave, Bulwer and Glenwood, that busy commuting area offline until 6 p.m. as well. Ashburton through to Cato Ridge looking okay, both directions on the N3. Cape Town's busy today, particularly coming out of the CBD. There's a big queue on Baton Truck coming from sort of the Whale Street side down towards Strand Street. That's for motorists heading towards the elevated freeway. And plenty of traffic on the N2, queuing up from Searle Street on Nelson Mandela Boulevard out to the Bend and then right through to about Bunga Avenue in front of Langa before that traffic starts to ease. And there's also been a collision and no traffic lights on Baden Powell at the N2. If you're northbound coming out of Khayelitsha, direction Stellenbosch, that remains slow. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
And our Siya Kolisi is busy.
Absolutely busy. He actually made his debut for Racing 92 this past weekend against La Rochelle, and they beat them. And he was saying that he was quite nervous before tasting that victory. And with them winning, it takes them to the number 1 spot in the French top 14 table. The 32-year-old played 54 minutes at open side flanker as Racing claimed their 6th win after just 8 games of the season to go above a surprise package pool. It has been a great time, though, for the former Sharks back rower because he's now become a poster boy for French rugby since the end of the World Cup, featuring on television programs and on the cover of newspapers. And Aldrin, earlier on, you were saying you saw Karnaleko NBA.
Yeah. Oh, but there was such a nice moment to see, because they've got that screen in the middle of what do they call that thing?
Court.
In the middle of the court, yeah. Up there, and there was Siya Kolisi's face, and then they had the Ama Boko Boko, and like, look at our Siya Kolisi.
He's celebrated all over the world, which is great, and it makes us to be proud to be South African.
Yeah, it does. Well done, Siya.
Yeah, well done, Sia. And then moving on to football, with Cape Town Spurs lingering at the bottom of the DStv Premiership table, the Urban Warriors will now turn their attention to an in-form Stellenbosch outfit, where the two sides set to do battle at the DHL Stadium tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. Now, Stellies are currently unbeaten in their last 4 matches, recording 3 victories and 1 stalemate during this period. And Bako's troops head into their next game off the back of a crucial 1-0 win over Amazulu. After accumulating 17 points from 12 matches, Stellenbosch are 7th spot on the log, and just reflecting on his side's win over Osotho, Baka reserved special praises on goalkeeper Sage Stevens, who he felt kept his side in the tie amid tough conditions in Durban. Elsewhere, Jude Bellingham scored his 14th goal of the season as Real Madrid returned to the top of La Liga with a 3-0 win over Cadiz. He has now the most goals by any Real Madrid player in their first 15 games. The previous record of 13 was jointly held by Cristiano Ronaldo, Alfredo Di Stefano and Pruden. Now, Bellingham has 11 goals in 12 La Liga games and 3 in Champions League since joining from Borussia Dortmund in the summer. In motorsport, Honda announced that it had signed Italian Lucia Marini, who's the half-brother of MotoGP legend Valentino Rossi, to a 2-year deal with its factory team. Marini takes over from Marc Marquez, who left Honda a year early to join his brother at Ducati satellite team Gresini Racing. Now, after his MotoGP debut back in 2021, Marini earned his first 2 podium finishes this season in the United States and Qatar. In the meantime, Red Bull's triple world champion Max Verstappen ripped up a year of unprecedented dominance with his record-extending 19th win in 22 races at the season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The pole to flag victory for the 4th year in a row under the Yas Marina floodlights left the 26-year-old alone in 3rd place in Formula One's all-time list of winners with a career 54. Only 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher have won more.
Yeah, I mean, the target today was to win, and then probably the second target was to try and get 1,000 laps in. At least my engineer was really on that, so we tried to also stay out as long as we could, that we didn't have anyone else extend too much and take too many laps in the lead. So yeah, I think we did well. The whole season, of course, it's been unbelievable. Incredible. I mean, I don't know what to say anymore. It's just been a lot of fun as well. Besides the performance, of course, and I also know that it will be very hard to do something similar again. I mean, of course, you will always try to aim for something like that, but to execute it's going to be very tough.
In the meantime, starting from pole, the Red Bull racer came under pressure from Charles Leclerc for the lead on the opening lap, but Verstappen eased away after to finish the season on 575 points, 290 clear of teammate Sergio Perez at the top of the standings.
We didn't leave anything on the table, and this is what mattered to me. But on the other hand, quite frustrated because I wanted that second place in the constructors, which we didn't get, and this is a bit, That's why I don't have the smile that I should have at the end of this race. But it's we've given absolutely everything, and it wasn't enough.
On that note, it's a wrap. More on other sports at 5:30.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield. It's for the bozzers who switch off the geyser when no one's home. And for our clever who get that there's food at home means exactly that. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
Dressing up is a winning mentality.
If you look good, you do good.
You feel good too.
Big ups to Polo South Africa
for making the SABC Sport team look good during the Rugby World Cup France 2023. Class and style on another level.
Rolebua.
Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Okay, I quickly want to ask you about this thing of so-called quote-unquote black magic being used in sports, and specifically with this particular case happened over the weekend with Running Galaxy, as well as what's the other team called again? Shucks, I just lost the Moroccan side. I just lost the name of the other team. But the coach, during a Q&A, is asked about black magic, and he says that you are undermining me, and then the person who's asking the question asked about, but there was a period where, just before the match, where all of the players had gathered around the corner kick post, and then they poured out what looks like liquid.
Muti and football. I guess it's a very popular topic, which is kind of like a taboo. And I'm saying this because there's a lot of rumors that have happened regarding Muti, or there's Muti being used in clubs. But I'm assuming your question is, vele, do clubs use Muti?
Yeah, has it been confirmed? Do we know? Could the guys who are in support of Wydad Casablanca have a point here that perhaps Running Galaxy actually used Muti?
Listen, one thing for sure is that there've always been rumors. Whether it's proven or not, we don't know. For example, I know that there've been rumors where Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs use Muti. It hasn't been confirmed if it does, and there's no confirmation if it actually does contribute to a player playing at their best or the team doing well. But we've seen, like, for example, during warm-ups, the Orlando Pirates players will walk around a goalpost. At one stage, I think there was like some powder being poured on the line. I remember, just off the top of my head, former Kaizer Chiefs goalkeeper Brian Baloyi had this bag that he always put in his goalpost, and people kept on asking, what's in the toiletry bag? But eventually he came out and said, guys, like, relax, it's just a towel in there. But people thought it was Muti. Another example is former, he's now Cape Town City's coach, what's his name, Eric Tinkler.
Yeah.
And I think they were playing against TTM, and he was complaining in the dressing room because they were playing away. Raiman, there's a foul smell, but at the same time, my players are busy itching, and there must be some sort of Muti here, but it's never been proven. There's always just rumors.
Yeah. Okay.
Clubs use Muti.
Okay, and speaking about never been proven, is there a way to actually prove that Muti has been used?
How do you prove?
Are you able to take whatever powder, whatever liquid has been poured on the pitch and say that we are now going to put it through some sort of test to check whether this is Muti or not? Is it even possible?
No, I doubt there is. But I mean, we've heard Mabarebar, some players saying, I used to play for this club. We used to get into some liquid thing, wash our bodies. Someone very famous has said that, or no, this club, they do
and
these
you can't
things.
Share names.
Yes. And they also even say, like, sometimes the results don't improve. The results don't improve. Some of them say, no, vele, it helped us. So we don't know. You can't prove it. We can just see these players doing funny things on the field, and then we assume, but is it proven or not?
It's something else. Diamante says, tell your sports reporter to leave my club, Orlando Pirates. That's just mind games.
I wanted to say, perhaps those, because I saw that video of the team that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was asking myself if it's mind games, because now the team just hurdles around this corner.
Yeah.
And the next thing, so no bona fella, this guy was wearing bottle. So I was like, is it mind games or not? But listen, Nakiti, all I know is that some clubs here in South Africa have been rumored to use Muti.
What do you say? Do you know of anything about black magic? Or somebody says here, voodoo is everywhere in Europe. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for a market update with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, do you know of any muti that could be used in the markets? Is that a possibility? Mkhulume no kokobani.
But I know people who've been using the stars, following the stars, that this will meet with this, then this probably will be happening.
Like stars in the galaxy?
Galaxy, yes. People using stuff like that. So if people can use that, you'll never know. But Tumi must just leave pirates alone.
We are hater. Let's look at Standard Bank's 10-month trading update and also Zida's annual results.
Aldrin, this is the bank that just said that it had not manipulated the value of the rand nor engaged in any anti-competitive or criminal conduct, and we've seen their banking revenue growth has slowed but remained above 20%, and that was driven by continued strong net interest income, non-interest revenue growth, and we've seen lower demand, reduced affordability, and also competitive pricing pressure, particularly in the mortgage in SA, resulting in lower disbursements to retail and business clients and a slowdown in growth in the related loan portfolios. Corporate origination remained strong, driven by energy-related opportunities, and non-interest revenue was supported by them getting more clients, higher transaction volumes, annual price increases, and also continued volatility, which supported trade revenues, and the credit impairments charges growth slowed but remained elevated. And remember, Zeta used to be known as Avis. The first time the guys are releasing the annual results as a listed entity, and this company was unbundled from Barloworld in 2022, and the guys managed to settle the unbundling debt of 1.5 billion 2 months ahead of time. And yes, the environment has been very challenging with high interest rates, and also when it comes to used cars, their demand have been very soft. Revenue up to 12%, with rental business growing its fleet to capture the increased demand in the corporate sector and the inbound market. Leasing business revenue growth driven by delivery of their strategy, that is to grow the heavy commercial fleet and increasing penetration when it comes to corporate and the greater Africa business. And car sales revenue was flat, and that was impacted by that increased availability of new cars and also high interest rates. But their profits as headline earnings per share were up 17%, and the market liked that because the share prices we're talking is up 4.5%.
And tell us about local and international market developments.
Markets are keenly waiting for the inflation data from both the US and European Union, and also China's PMI numbers. And also back home here, we'll be looking at our producer price index and also PMI numbers. And the recent stock rally has been fueled by yields dropping, as the chance of an easing when it comes to borrowing costs has generated a big rally in bonds. That in turn has been a drag on the US dollar. And as we are approaching month end, we could see some caution, as we are seeing now currently, given the hefty gains that investors are sitting on. As we are talking, the JSE itself in the month of November so far is up a whopping 8.5%, and the rand is doing better today as the dollar fell ahead of that key inflation data, and the dollar has been falling for most of this month on growing expectation that the US Fed could start cutting interest rates next year. And oil prices fell below $80 a barrel as traders awaited this week's OPEC Plus meeting, and also expected some cuts when it comes to supplies into 2024. Brent crude is down 0.2% at 79.90, and as the dollar continued to be soft and expectations of interest rates posing, that itself lifted the yellow metal to a 6-month high. And we see gold is up 0.5% at 2011. Platinum is down 1.5% at 916. DAX, just like FTSE, down 0.2%. CAC, just like the Dow, flat. S&P is down 0.2%. The JSE is down 0.3%, with our resources up 0.6%, but our industrials are down 0.6%, and financials down 0.7%. The rand is 18.71 to the US dollar, 23.61 to the pound, and 20.44 to the euro.
Thank you so much. That's Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers.
So Sharon at office was telling me the way drip is so expensive these days. She's now waiting for her old clothes to come back into fashion. I say, Joza, while you're waiting, why not let your money do the things in a Netbank Just Invest account where you can get your money after 24 hours notice? Oganchani voiceman.
Injalo, Mabel. Earn up to 9% interest. Anyone can open an investment account via the Money app in under 2 minutes. See money differently. Netbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's on the interest rates apply.
Score big with Diatoro South Africa, and your soccer team could soon face your opponent in Diatoro gear. Show off your love for the game and gear up for victory. Join the competition now for a chance to win a full soccer team kit, a goalkeeper kit, and accessories. All you have to do is follow at diatoro.southafrica on Instagram. Tag your team and teammates in the comment section of our posts. The competition closes on the 30th of November at 2 p.m. T's and C's apply.
Hashtag we love it here.
This great initiative is supported by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
It is 11 minutes now before 5 o'clock. We're in conversation next with the Mighty Mac's mother, Megan Friedman. It's a celebration for Mackenzie Mighty Mac Friedman and her family. 2 years ago, Mackenzie received an official diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia, and after founding her stem cell match and underwent her life-changing transplant, last week's test came back indicating that she has reached 100% donor chimerism. We are now joined by her mother, Megan Friedman. Megan, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
How's the family feeling that now you've reached this 100% donor chimerism?
So I think we're all a little bit still in disbelief, and we don't really know quite what to do with ourselves because it's taken us 2.5 years to get to this point. 2.5 years of daily chemo, monthly bone marrow biopsies, lots and lots of operations, many tears, and I think we don't really know what this means for the future. We still have to meet with her transplant team so that we can figure out next steps, but beyond being shocked, we obviously are ecstatic. This is what we've been waiting for the longest time.
And how's Mackenzie doing?
She's doing great. I'm sure you can probably hear her shouting in the background.
Oh, is that her in the background?
Swimming pool. Yeah. She actually had her last, what we hope will be her last bone marrow biopsy for a while this morning. So she was in hospital this morning just to test that the cancer cells are still all in remission, because it's quite a complex interaction between the donor chimerism and the cancer being in remission. But we are hoping and trusting that everything is fine and that will be the last time that we have to have her in hospital for a while.
Do you know who the donor is?
We don't know who the donor is. The donor process is an anonymous process. We know that it's a male, and we know that he was 24 years of age when he donated the cells. And that's all we know for now. We're allowed to find out if she makes it to 5 years post-transplant. So that's the date that they draw in the sand for the donor and the recipient to meet.
Yeah, and all of this happening just before her birthday. I wonder how you guys
January.
will be celebrating, eh?
I'm sure there will be very big celebrations for her birthday next year.
Yeah. Speak to us about the medical team that you guys are working with as well.
Sure, we've got an unreal medical team. Our head oncologist is a doctor called Dr. Nadia Berenger. She's at the Donald Gordon Medical Center, and she is the most unbelievable doctor I've ever met in my life. She's not only a doctor, but she's become one of our very good friends. She treated Mackenzie like she was her own child throughout our journey, and we were so lucky to have her. We also had incredible ICU doctors at the Donald Gordon, because unfortunately Mackenzie was ventilated a few times, so she was in ICU for a while. They've got the most unreal team there. We also have consulted with Nadia and the transplant doctors, because there's a different team of transplant doctors who are also incredible. They're at the transplant facility across the road from Donald Gordon. They've all consulted with doctors across the world, I think from America to Israel to London, and everyone's kind of come together to find out the best way forward for this little girl, because her cancer was obviously an extremely rare and dangerous type of cancer, especially to be diagnosed with at 4 months old.
Yeah, yeah. And also considering that this happened during the height of COVID-19, I wonder from the work that's been done by the medical team, if they were able to deduce that the reason that this particular process was so long and difficult was also a contribution of COVID-19.
I don't think that her treatment was in any way affected by COVID. She was fortunate that she didn't actually get COVID while we were in the hospital. The only reason she didn't get COVID was because she was actually ventilated for something else at the time. Okay. I think what it did do is it contributed to huge difficulties in having to overcome her treatment, because it meant that her dad and I were hospitalized with her for in excess of 8 months, where we weren't allowed to leave the hospital, enter it, or exit it at all, and nobody was allowed to come in and visit us. So we were all alone with her for a long period of time, and all the people that we saw were the doctors and the nurses that were there on a daily basis. So we obviously became very close with her treatment team, and I don't know if that maybe contributed to them feeling a sense of bonding with her, but it obviously was a very difficult time for us and our family to try and get through.
Yeah, yeah. And how are you and your husband doing?
Yeah, we're good. We have another little girl now. She's nearly 2.
Congratulations.
So we're very busy running around after 2 toddlers. You can imagine we're quite tired. I think I've got a little bit of PTSD that I'm trying to deal with and make my way through. But aside from that, we're blessed with 2 happy and healthy children right now. So we are as good as can be.
Can you take us back to May 2021 when you were told about the AML diagnosis?
Oh, and you're going to make me cry talking about it, because it's really, I remember it like yesterday. Mackenzie was a perfectly healthy, happy little baby, and at 4 months old, she got a bit of a fever. She woke up with a fever, and she was just a bit miserable, and I remember phoning my sister, who had 2 children by that stage, and she said, it's just a fever, babies get fevers, don't stress about it, give her Calpol. And for some reason, I think between her granny and I, we decided let's just rather take her to the GP, and the GP sent us home that night, and he said, it's a bit weird that she's got this fever and I can't see any signs of infection, but bring her back in the morning if it hasn't gone away. And we had quite a rough night with her. Her temperature got quite high. And so when we took her back in the morning, I remember it very clearly because it was my first Mother's Day. He said, something just wasn't sitting right with him, and he wanted us to go to the pediatrician for blood tests, but he didn't want us to wait for Monday. He wanted us to go then and there, and he phoned ahead to Sandton Clinic, and we rushed off to Sandton Clinic. And I actually said to her dad in the car, what if it's something terrible like cancer? And he said, don't be silly, it's just a bacterial infection, everything will be fine. And at the hospital, they obviously did bloods, and we stayed the night for observation purposes. And in the morning, the pediatrician came in and closed the door and said, Mommy and Daddy, I have to tell you something. And that was the end of our worlds as we knew them.
Sure, difficult period. But I have to say the other thing about your story as well is how your family has come out with great support, and looking at the work, for instance, that Amy and Nikita did on social media, and how, for instance, while you were looking for a donor, you've also now actually reached a point where you're spreading a much bigger message, and it's not really just about Mackenzie.
Yeah, it's unreal what Amy and Nikita managed to achieve while we were in there. We actually had no idea of what was going on in the movement that had begun, the Mighty Mac and Mac's army that my sister Amy and Bronson's sister Nikita started. And what they've achieved with that is beyond miraculous. Apparently, the donor agencies received more sign-ups during that period that Mackenzie was ill than they had sort of ever received in that time period before. So countless lives have been saved by that. And in fact, something very close to home was her godfather, his name is Chad. He actually got called up after having signed up as a donor on the registry, and he got called up as a match for somebody, and he did a donation about 3 months ago. So he saved somebody's life as a result of Mackenzie getting sick, which is very meaningful to us, obviously.
Life-saving decisions there that have been made by Amy and Nikita. But thank you so much for making time for us, and thank you so much, Megan, for sharing the story and the journey that you and Mackenzie, as well as a father, are going through. Really appreciate it. And congratulations to the medical team as well. And may they unleash more medical frontiers.
I do not doubt them for 1 second. I believe that they will conquer milestones, and there's nowhere else in the world that I would rather be receiving this type of treatment. I think we are leaps and ahead of the rest of the world with regards to that type of care in our private sector here. So well done to the team.
Yeah, and please give Mackenzie a happy birthday kiss in advance.
We will do. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. That's Megan Friedman,
Bye-bye.
who is the mother of Mackenzie Friedman, better known as Mighty Mac. 0614-104107. And you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. You got to love the story of the human spirit. It is incredible. And this story is one of those moments. Let's take some of your voice notes.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Hi, Aldrin. Khalishima Usela from Mokopane. Yes, PSL teams use Muti. I've seen happening. Usually they do it when they come to greet fans just before the match start. There will be a period where they'll come in and go back at that time. Yeah, I've seen it happening at Pitamukaba. Baroka was using Muti. Even Kaizer Chiefs was using Muti. I've seen it even with Super Sport United. I've seen it with Orlando Pirates. They do use Muti. Thank you very much.
So again, who tests and who can prove that indeed it is Muti?
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Indeed, it's true. Muti works in football. Even amateur clubs used Muti. Even professional teams used Muti. It depends which team used a strong Muti. If you don't believe, you can ask Mr. Singimunisi. He will tell you that Muti works wonders in football.
So Muti works wonders in football. Tell us about what you know, and perhaps if you can, even if you could share some evidence of the so-called Muti. Again, who tests and makes sure that it is actually Muti that's being used? Like somebody was saying earlier on, that it could be just mind games. So what if I come with a bottle of water and just pour it on the pitch? And will you guys say, Kalilu Aldrin? Maybe I should bring like a manzinyana la. Fluff it all over the mic. Fire! It's 5 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
DA speaks on Joburg city manager ruling and severe snowstorm hits Ukraine. Good day to you. The DA in Johannesburg says it's been vindicated after the High Court in Johannesburg dismissed the city's appeal regarding the appointment of Floyd Brink as the city manager. He was appointed by the Joburg Council in February this year despite not passing the vetting requirements. However, in May, the DA launched a court application against Brink's appointment. The party argued that he didn't meet the minimum requirements of the job specifications. The court ruled in the DA's favour and found that the process to appoint Brink was procedurally flawed. However, the city appealed the ruling but has now lost after the appeal was dismissed. The DA's Belinda Casey Akishoshong.
He pointed out earlier this month that Floyd Brink's forced expulsion was yet another reason for the dissolution of the Johannesburg Council. Today, our stance in this matter is once more vindicated. The appointment of the city manager was yet another example of a corrupt regime trying to deploy yet another one of their cadres. This is the reality of the city of Johannesburg and the reason they are failing.
Survey released by the Human Sciences Research Council has highlighted progress made towards ending HIV in South Africa. The council, in collaboration with partners, has announced key findings from the SA National HIV Prevalence, Incidence and Behaviour Survey. The survey found that the percentage of all people living with HIV in this country has dropped from 14% in 2017 to 12.7%. Kangalani Zuma is from the Human Sciences Research Council.
The numbers of new infections among younger people is actually dropping, because if there were more new infections, the HIV prevalence in 2022 would have been higher, especially among the younger ones. But the shift, it shows that there's fewer and fewer people below 40 years that are getting infected. Like, it shows a good picture that fewer and fewer people are getting infected with HIV. The epidemic is shifting. So we show that people in a way are actually living longer with HIV than it was the case in the previous years.
Pietermaritzburg High Court has sentenced a 22-year-old man to 2 terms of life imprisonment for the rape and murder of a 4-year-old girl at Harding in southern KZN. The NPA's Natasha Ramkasun-Kara.
In his plea, he mentioned how he lured the 4-year-old child to an abandoned toilet. There he raped and strangled her before fleeing the scene. He was arrested a few days later in the Umzimkhulu area. The NPA welcomes the successful prosecution. As the country observes the 16 Days of Activism campaign, we hope that sentences of this nature demonstrate our efforts to fight for justice on behalf of the victims of crime.
The Water and Sanitation Minister, Sinzim Mchunu, says they're working on tackling water challenges in the Madibeng local municipality in the northwest. Residents living in the municipality have been struggling to access clean drinking water for many years. The minister elaborates.
But we were in touch with the mayor, I think 3 days ago, wherein we said the mayor must give us the state of water in Brits, because there are several boreholes that are no longer functional now. We want to look at that. So Brits people in this municipality, they must know we are tackling their issues.
Finally, a severe snowstorm bringing strong winds has covered Ukraine, leaving more than 2,000 settlements across 16 regions without power and more than a dozen motorways closed to vehicles. The extreme weather comes as tens of thousands of troops man frontline positions in the 21-month-old war with Russia and amid fears that Russia could target the country's power grid with airstrikes. The top story, the DA in Joburg says has been vindicated after the High Court dismissed the city's appeal regarding the appointment of Floyd Brink as the city manager. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Close.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, all the trucks broken down on Joburg's N3 North, one at Galuli's, one at Linksfield, they've all finally been cleared away, which is good news. Traffic is starting to move. Big delays passing Southgate home to Soweto. There's a crash inside the Deep Cliff interchange. The N12 backs up just after Xavier Street and is looking pretty heavy. Durban, there's a whole pile of congestion around the Chris Hani Kwamashu Highway N2 bridge. If you're coming in from Duffs Road or heading out from Durban North, or even on the old North Coast Road, Glen Anil area down towards the Chris Hani run, that's a very busy N2 South chock-a-block between Inanda Road and Spaghetti Junction. Well, we're in KZN. Don't forget this overnight tonight and for the rest of this week from 8 p.m. until 5 a.m. the following morning. The R103 Ashburn through to Polly Shorts will be closed for major upgrades. During the night, you'll be diverted off onto the N3. And Cape Town, the N2 stays busy leaving the city centre out through Hospital Bend towards Bunga Avenue in Langa and Marine Drive. Heavy now, it's all clogged up through Parton Island towards Lagoon Beach and the Boundary Road Junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Coming up in your sports this hour, slim chances of coaching an African club anytime soon for Mosimane. Kolisi admits to nerves in first racing run and positive signs for Amla and his Tusker side. More details at 5:30.
I like to sell it, but want a good price for it. Where can I sell it? I like to sell it. I like to sell it. I like
Whoa. You want to sell your car?
Yes.
Okay.
Why do you ask?
Well, because we'd like to buy it. 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 You want to sell it? We want to buy it. We buy cars. The best way to sell your car by far.
Score big with Diadora South Africa, and your soccer team could soon face your opponents in Diadora gear. Show off your love for the game and gear up for victory. Join the competition now for a chance to win a full soccer team kit, a goalkeeper kit, and accessories. All you have to do is follow at Diadora.SouthAfrica on Instagram. Tag your team and teammates in the comment section of our posts. The competition closes on the 30th of November at 2 p.m. T's and C's apply.
# we love it here.
This great initiative is supported by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies invites interested individuals and stakeholders to submit written comments on the SABC bill. The bill seeks to repeal the Broadcasting Act of 1999 to regulate the continued existence of the SABC, to provide for its governance, to amend the ICASA Act of 2000 and the Electronic Communications Act of 2005. For more information, contact the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies by emailing sabc sabcbill@parliament.gov.za. That is sabcbill@parliament.gov.za, directed to Hajari Sali. The closing date for written submissions is Friday, the 15th of December 2023 at 4:30. So that is 4:30 p.m.
This is the station of the year, SAFM, leading the conversation.
lizosuka nabani na lizosuka noBrahma Eli walithatha uBrahma Eli wanikeza uStephen Quarters ulithathile uStephen Quarters izalithini na wanikeza uKethi Kethi linikeza uSakhina Kamendo Sakhina Kamendo uliphethe uSakhina Kamendo wanikeza uBridget Masinga uphasela kuAldrin Sampear uzalithini na liphakathi Aldrin Sampear. Oh, siyanibongela. Thank you. Congratulations, SAFM.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
And I can confirm no muti was used there. No muti was used there. It is 9 minutes after 5 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, we speak to the spokesperson for the health department in Limpopo. They are looking into the death of a patient who was allegedly denied access into the Northam clinic in the Waterberg district. We're going to have the conversation with the spokesperson for the Department of Health. And then at 20 past 5, we speak to Professor Dirk Coetzee, Professor of Political Sciences at the University of South Africa, as we look at the parties circumventing the Party Political Fund Act, which says that they must declare 100,000 Rand funding and above. So if you donate 100,000 Rand to a political party or above that, that amount needs to be declared, and your name, of course, will be attached to it. So some political parties saying that, I first heard the EFF say this, maybe there was another political party that did it, but I first heard the EFF say that they're encouraging sponsors and donors to donate below the 100,000 Rand threshold, because there are certain people who fear to donate. They fear that there could be retaliation from the governing party, and some of them do business with the state. So over the weekend, I was at the Frank Dialogues, which is hosted by JJ Tabane, and he had the Rise Mzansi leader, Songezo Zibi, and Songezo said that Rise Mzansi will also be launching a campaign which they call 99,000, and that is to encourage their donors, people who want to donate money to the party, to donate the money, but below the threshold, which would then then if they do that, of course, there won't be a requisite that they must actually declare the funding that came from those particular individuals. And during his discussion with JJ, he did say that there are some donors who want to donate money to the party, but because they fear reprisal from the ANC and they do business with the government, for that reason, they are not donating money to the party. So 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. You see, the issue of Mutine, if it really worked, African teams would have won World Cup countless times. So the thing of Muti is just psychological, man. There is nothing about Muti working in football. Thank you.
Somebody made the exact same point earlier on as well, that if that was the case and if Muti did really work, why have we never won a World Cup? Why haven't we even gone past the group stages? Why haven't we even qualified for the World Cup apart from 2010 when we automatically qualified as the host? Why?
Hi there, Aldrin and the team. Aldrin and the team, I just want to thank the security companies these days for fighting crime, because crime has become their duty to fight. The police, it seems like many of them, they got into corruption. So it's security companies that fight crime these days. So I want to thank them. I say big up to them, and we'll keep on supporting them for them to fight crime. Thank you.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Conversation to be had one day is also looking at the resources that the security companies have at their disposal, and do they by any means outweigh what our law enforcement, like national law enforcement, actually has at their disposal. But yeah, I've also noted that there has been increasing cooperation between the police as well as private security companies in combating crime. But there is a slight concern around resources perhaps that security companies would have, which outweigh what the national law enforcement agencies would have. It is now 13 minutes after 5 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Tilivari Mohava, who is the spokesperson for the MEC for Health in Limpopo. So the health department in Limpopo has confirmed that they are currently looking into the death of a patient who was allegedly denied access into the Northam Clinic in Waterberg district. According to the department, the 23-year-old critically ill patient died after the security guards refused his family entry due to load shedding. Tilivari now joining us on the line. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Well, good afternoon, Aldrin, and good afternoon to all your listeners.
So from your preliminary investigation, what happened here?
Well, let me just start by saying this is one of those distressing incidents wherein when you hear that in a day, so you had a bad start of a day. But coming to your question, the incident that happened yesterday, 3 a.m., it really brought us to a space wherein we couldn't believe what actually happened. But what we had and what we were trying to sort out, and we were told that a family brought in a critical ill patient to the facility that is called Northam Clinic at 3 a.m. And of course, when they arrived there, the security guards, instead of them allowing them access to the clinic, they said they won't be able to allow them access because of load shedding. And to our surprise is that they should have done that maybe in consultation with the nurses who were in the facility at that moment. And that which was quite surprising to us is that they even had to go to an extent of asking the family members to get the contact numbers of the ambulance or either emergency medical services so that they can be able to come fetch this patient. And the family did exactly what they were told, and they called the ambulance. It's just unfortunate that when the ambulance arrived, the man had already demised.
So this happened in front of the clinic, like right at the clinic's gate?
Yes, it's happening in front of the clinic gate where the security will have access and to man the access of everybody coming in and out.
Yeah. So does it mean that the 23-year-old died right there at the gate?
Yes, he died right there by the gate side. Remember, this is the patient who, when he came, we were told, because fortunate enough, when we have to check with all the nurses who were in at the facility at the moment after the incident has happened, they told us that this patient was bleeding in all of his orifices, which means that you get to see his eyes were bleeding, his ears bleeding, his nose bleeding. So unfortunately, he couldn't be able to get that access of that medical attention.
Yeah. So when the nurses say that they gave you this information about him bleeding from all his body orifices, what were they doing at the time while the patient was at the gate?
Remember, it happened 3 a.m. in the morning. This is the clinic that serves 24-hour services. Now, it means that they will have to be called to say, okay, let's say, for instance, the security guard will have to open the gate, allow and usher the patient to go to the clinic where those nurses were. So imagine when they are inside the clinic, they couldn't be able to see what was happening on the other side. And they were only notified when the ambulance came, when the patient had demised, and they couldn't be able to do anything at that moment.
Okay. So the security then not allowing the patient in, and this is a 24-hour clinic that operates for 24 hours. Has it been established where the instruction would have come from to say that once there is load shedding, the clinic will not be operating or will not be allowing patients to come in?
Look, that's one thing that we're still trying to establish as for now, because the incident happened over the weekend. So today, that's where we're trying to get all this information that can be able to give us exactly what transpired during the course of the incident. But again, Aldrin, you remember that this is a 24-hour service clinic which had a generator. It's unfortunate that the generator by the time couldn't kick off after the load shedding. And in the normal way, we know that when load shedding kicks start, the generator will have to kickstart on the other side. I mean, when the load shedding comes, and the generator will have to kick on the other side. But that time it couldn't kick, and that's one thing that we can be able to establish as to what really caused that to happen on the day.
Yeah. Do you know from any other patients' experiences, or even speaking to the nurses, that once an incident of that nature happens where there's load shedding and the generator doesn't kick in, that then means that services of the clinic are suspended?
And definitely, we don't even suspend the services, Aldrin, because apart from having darkness, the nurses, if the generator doesn't kick at the moment, the nurses have been provided with solar lights that can be able to light the space so that they can be able to assist patients who come. And remember, there will be patients who come critically ill like that one. Say, for instance, a pregnant woman comes in there. You can't say because there's load shedding. When you have got lights, you'll be able to forget about load shedding, the electricity power. Then you get to see and to be able to assist the patient when there's light. And those lamps are provided to each and every facility, because we definitely know that as an augmentation of the situation, we need to make sure that we get all those lights, so that by the time we are caught in such an incident, therefore our nurses and our healthcare professionals can be able to do the work.
Yeah. So you don't know of the clinic itself suspending operations when there is load shedding, as well as when the generators don't kick in? So this is the first incident of this type that you've heard of, outside of the death that occurred lately on. But have you heard of patients who have gone to the clinic and said that sometimes the clinic suspends their operations?
We have never heard of such. And you know what we have heard before, it will be a case when security personnel who will be manning the gates, at times they will say, no, you can't come in here because of the load shedding or other, there's no electricity, and it will happen midday. That which it happened once in one of the clinics, and we were so robust in terms of addressing such incidences. That's why the MEC said, when security guards are given their job description, they all know that their duties are not to triage the patients. All they need to do is to make sure that they allow patients inside. Whoever takes a decision as to whether this patient cannot be seen or not, it will be the nurses or the healthcare professionals who they can be able, instead of maybe seeing the situation, a condition which would be above them, they can be able to transfer the patient to the nearest, or either refer the patient to the nearest facility wherein they are capable, or either they are healthcare professionals who can be able to do that. And that is one thing that we're making a call, and the MEC has been making this call to say, security guards, all that they need to do is to make sure that they don't get into the space where they will be tempted to triage patients as they come to the facility.
Thank you so much for your time. Tiriwali Imwava is the spokesperson for the MEC for Health in Limpopo, following the death of a 23-year-old outside the clinic, where the security barred the family from entering the clinic because there was load shedding. And now, of course, the investigation is underway. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. And welcome to BTH Idols.
My name is Dileka Mabuya from Port Elizabeth, Walma, and I'm going to be singing a song called Lord, I thank you for sunshine. Lord, I thank you for sunshine. Thank you for rain. Thank you for joy. Thank you for pain. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. We're in conversation next with Professor Dirk Coetzee, who's a professor for political science at the University of South Africa, that is UNISA. Political parties are requesting donations that fall slightly short of the 100,000 Rand threshold in order to avoid having to disclose their contributions and perhaps undermine the Funding Act. So what should happen to these political parties? Should the laws be amended to prevent this from happening? Professor Dirk Coetzee now joining us on the line. Prof, good evening, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
I was sharing with our listeners that over the weekend on Friday, I went to JJ Dabane's dialogue, Frank dialogue, and he had Songezo Zibi, who is the leader of Rise Mzansi. And Songezo said that in the next short while, very soon, the party will launch a campaign which they call 99,000, which means encouraging donors to donate money, but under the 100,000 Rand threshold that would trigger a declaration. What's your interpretation of what's happening with the Political Funding Act and how parties are trying to circumvent it or even undermine it, but also the real threat that they speak about, that some of the donors don't want to donate money because they fear reprisal from the governing party?
Yes, what you are mentioning is indeed very much relevant. There are many persons or companies or private sector and otherwise who don't want to be seen to be or known to be donating money to any political party. And this is the reason why there is this provision in the Act that anything less than 100,000 they don't have to declare. And then there's at the same time that there's threshold of 15 million. Not more than 15 million can be donated per year by any person or any company. So that is very typical of many dispensations all over the world. It is the US is a very good example of it, and the UK they use it also thresholds in terms of how much money parties can spend in total on election campaigns. In many other countries they concentrate on small donations. And I think this is the one tradition that doesn't exist in South Africa, which I think is actually lacking. It's something which should exist much more, that people can contribute 100 Rand or 1,000 Rand or anything like that instead of just the big companies. And the reason why there is this provision that they must declare their donations is that you and I, who are going to give a small amount of money, won't have any influence on those political parties and their decision making. But if you give them a 20 million Rand or more, that is a different ballgame. Then the possibility of influencing that political party, and once they are a governing party, to be put in a position where you can expect some favors in return for that becomes then a real possibility. And that is really the rationale behind these different cutoff points in terms of amounts of money.
Yeah, and behind this as well was, of course, the push for transparency, that there must be transparency and individuals, the electorate, could know who the money has been donated to. And I remember the arguments being made in the Constitutional Court as well around why that is important. But when political parties then circumvent the law based on what they are putting forward, how then do we deal with the question of transparency and also adherence to what is envisioned in this Party Political Funding Act?
Well, they are acting in accordance with the Act, so they are not circumventing the Act. And it is exactly as I explained it now. If small amounts of money is not going to sway political parties to take particular decisions or give them a contract once they become government, or be in a sense sort of influenced by those donors. But if you are a donor that gave them a few million rands, then it becomes more likely. And that is the whole notion. It is not about funding per se and funding coming from the private sources. It is funding with a loaded capacity, the capacity that they can influence political parties in a particular direction, or they can buy favor from those political parties, or they can make it difficult for parties to weigh up the different interests that once they are, for example, the governing party must take into account.
Yeah.
So the donation component per se is not problematic, but it is once it becomes influential in that sense, then it becomes that they must account for it in public.
So the ANC also complains about the act as well, and complains about the threshold. They also speak about how it has affected their ability to raise money. From your end, do you think perhaps maybe there is a need to increase the threshold?
Not at all. I was myself involved in the process, the oral presentations in Parliament. And then initially, first of all, there was nothing. In the first draft, there was nothing. I and others introduced it to say there must be a threshold, and there must be some restrictions also on, for example, foreign political parties, which today is not yet excluded from in the Act. So certainly the threshold is already, in my view, too high. It should have been lower than 15 million. And the idea is no, I don't want to, can put it in crude terms, but I think most political parties are actually a bit lazy. They don't want to go to their supporters to have big rallies and events and so on, where these donations on a big scale, many 100 Rand, 200 Rand, 500 Rand, 1,000 Rand top of donations they can get. Because what does it mean? It means also that it brings them closer to their own supporters, to their support base. They don't want to do that. They want to go to a few big donors and say, that's it. We got our money. And I think this is the big cultural difference between the South African political parties' approach and that of many other countries in the world, where they are willing to do the footwork and go create opportunities where there's large groups of people who are willing to provide donations.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Professor Dirk Coetzee there, Professor of Political Sciences at the University of South Africa, UNISA. So what do you make of that? Rise Mzansi saying that they are also going to have a campaign at 99,000 Rand to encourage the donors to donate money that is below 99,000, which wouldn't trigger a declaration to declare 100,000, for instance, which is the limit that we currently have, or the threshold that would trigger a declaration. But also on the other part, I wonder if the Party Funding Act, the Political Party Funding Act, also has had some unintended consequences, in that now you find that political parties are really struggling to raise money for their campaigns. And mind you, we're heading into the general elections now in 2024. 0614 104 107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032. It's time for the news headlines with Greg Host. Good evening.
Good evening and thank you, Aldrin. A quick look at the headlines. 5 people have died in a crash involving a truck on the R57 in the Free State. The DA in Johannesburg says it's been vindicated after the High Court dismissed the city's appeal regarding the appointment of Floyd Brink as the city manager. And international pressures growing for an extension to the temporary truce in Gaza. There's a full update, as always, at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And a final look at what's happening on the roads with Rob Byrne.
The earlier crash on the N12 westbound at Deepcliff's been cleared, but it's left a big queue of traffic from sort of Ridgeway area from Xavier Street, moving very slow in towards Soweto. The N1 North is queuing up through Buccleuch towards New Road, and that queue includes a delay on the N3 into Buccleuch from Limbo Park, and the N1 just after Rivonia Road as you hit that off-ramp to turn north in towards Midrand. So very slow going there. Also heavy backlogs leaving Pretoria today. The N1 a breakdown at Rigel, as well as some roadworks there, so very slow going from as far back as Linwood Road. Durban, all the pressure around the Chris Hani and Kumashu Highway into bridge system, really heavy coming from Kumashu, arriving up from Durban North, and even the old North Coast Road from Glen Anil, very slow going down towards that Chris Hani Road. There's also been a crash on the M41 at the N2. That's leaving Mount Edgecombe and Phoenix, with some load shedding in Phoenix as well, tapping some delays. Cape Town today, the N2 out of town stays busy to Hospital Bend, and there's a lot of traffic on Marine Drive out through to Milnerton and Montague Gardens. Summer Greens very heavy today. Bosmansdam Road, big queues to the N7. Behind that, Montague Drive, leaving Montague Gardens, and Umarumba Road through Joe Slovo. All of those routes back into that traffic on Bosmansdam Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
A possibility at all of a Pitso Mosimane joining Chiefs?
I don't know about that, but what I know is that he says that there's a stronger chance of returning to coach a national team and not a club if he were to return to Africa.
Not a national team.
He says he wants to return to a national team.
Oh, he wants to return to a
and
national
not
team.
a club.
Oh.
That's if he returns to Africa.
Yeah.
So that's what he was saying today.
But what is Chiefs? Do we know whether Chiefs have actually said that, hey, listen, let's talk?
No. All we know that is that he's linked to being perhaps Chiefs' next target with them approaching him to be a coach. I don't know if
and
he's
they can actually win cups.
Listen.
Without Muti.
We don't know. But, he's currently taking a break from coaching after he had a contract at the United Arab Emirates club Al Wada. And his contract was terminated a few weeks ago. And obviously he's been linked to Kaizer Chiefs. But the chances of that materializing are very slim, judging from this response.
Yeah, and probably there might be interest back at home. And also, maybe national teams would be nice also. That depends which one, and depends on the vision also, remember? And it's Cup of Nations in January, so maybe short term, maybe too early for that. But maybe after January, which is the World Cup qualifiers keep going on. So, yeah, maybe that can also interest me, but it has to be the right thing. But on that one, with national teams, I'm back. I don't have a problem to be back in the continent. But club-wise in the continent, it's not going to be that easy.
Well, there you have it. And still staying with football, Kaizer Chiefs interim head coach Kevin Johnson has played down allegations of racial tensions within the club. This is following reports this past weekend that players were divided along racial lines at the club. According to a report in Sunday World, black players claim that coloured players are treated better by the club's management. However, Johnson says that they don't have any racial tensions in their camp. And these allegations come in the wake of disciplinary problems with the club captain Itumeleng Nkune currently suspended and facing a disciplinary hearing tomorrow after he tested for alcohol at training last week. In rugby, two-time World Cup winning Springbok captain Siya Kolisi said that he had been nervous before tasting victory on his Racing 92 debut as they beat La Rochelle in Paris to take over the number one spot in the French top 14 table. The 32-year-old played 54 minutes at open side flanker as Racing claimed their sixth win after just 8 games of the season to go above surprise package poor. It's been a great time for Kolisi as he has become a poster boy for French rugby since the end of the World Cup, featuring on television programs and also on the cover of newspapers. In cricket, after the opening 2 matches of the CSA 4-day domestic series, Tuskers head coach Ahmed Amla believes that there are plenty of positives to draw on going into the rest of the campaign. The Tuskers lost their opening to defending champions Dolphins. This is before drawing a weather-affected match against West Province. Now their next assignment is an away fixture against Northwest in Potchefstroom. And heading into that match, Amla has had time to reflect on their opening games, and he's quite positive that they are heading into the right direction as a team. In motorsport, Honda announced that it has signed Luca Marini, who's the half-brother of MotoGP legend Valentino Rossi, on a 2-year deal with its factory team. He's coming in to replace Marc Marquez, who is gone to join his brother at Ducati satellite team Gresini Racing. And then still staying with motorsport, Red Bull's triple world champion Max Verstappen wrapped up his year with great dominance, with his record extending 19th win in 22 races at the season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Now the pole to flag victory for the 4th year in a row under the Yas Marina floodlights left the 26-year-old alone in 3rd place in Formula One's all-time list of winners with a career 54.
Yeah, I mean, the target today was to win, and then probably the second target was to try and, get 1,000 laps in. At least my engineer was really on that, so we tried to also stay out as long as we could, that we didn't have anyone else extend too much and take too many laps in the lead. I think we did well. The whole season, of course, it's been unbelievable. Incredible. I mean, I don't know what to say anymore. It's just been a lot of fun as well. Besides the performance, of course, and I also know that it will be very hard to do something similar again. I mean, of course, you will always try to aim for something like that, but to execute it's going to be very tough.
On that note, it's a wrap from my side. Don't forget to tune in to Top Sport with Michael Abramson. That's from 7 till 8 p.m. Other than that, ke natume nkgapele modimo ke yo.
The 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children campaign. This year, be an activist. Play your part. Do not protect abusers. Report them. Hashtag no to GBVF.
SAFM leading the conversation.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for MoneyWeb Market Update with Jimmy Moyaha. Jimmy, good evening. Welcome to the show. What's coming up?
Good evening, Aldrin. Good evening to the listeners. On today's show, we take a look at a couple of stories. Some have been developing over the weekend, and some are news events from today. So we take a look at some results. We had Oceana report results. We speak to their CFO around that. We had Zeda report their first set of results, or first full year set of results since listing in October of last year. So we catch up with them around that. And then we dig into the developing stories that have unfolded over the weekend around, if you remember last week, there were early rumblings of potential currency manipulation on the rand, and companies or banks rather, like Standard Chartered announced that they had reached settlement agreements with the Competition Commission. Since then, we've seen Standard Bank come out with a statement saying that they were not involved, they have no role in that. So we get comments from Standard Bank around that. We also take a look at something that came out of VW South Africa around the concerns that they have around the economy. They have serious concerns to the extent that they are putting out conversations to the tune that they may be looking or maybe considering shutting down their plant. Now, that plant already, or the VW South Africa business already employs around 3,500 people. I think that is in their Uitenhage plant. And so that would have a disastrous impact on our employment situation. So we take a look at that, get some thoughts from VW as to where their thinking is and what's happening in that respect. And then because it's Monday, we've got our personal finance segment. And on today's segment, we take a look at the two-pot retirement system. We've had all of these retirement announcements come and go, and it's all confusing to figure out what's happening. The two-pot system was supposed to be effective the 1st of March 2025. Now we're looking at 1st of March 2024. And so we're just going to take a look at, first of all, what that system looks like, what the changes are, and how it'll impact those looking to retire, and what financial decisions they may need to make. But before we get to all of that, let's do a quick wrap of the markets. Let's take a look at just some of the movements that have happened throughout the day. The all share finished in the red. It was down almost 0.5%, with resources remaining positive, though. They were up about 0.2%, despite this movement. On the financial side, financials were down about 1%. Industrials were down about 0.8%. Some of the big movers throughout the day, Ascendus Health was up about 19%, with Adcorp up about 11.3%, and Karoo up about 7.78%. We're still trying to figure out what's happening with that Karoo share price. If you remember last week, there were some weird movements, up 40% one day, down 19% the next, so we're still digging into that. But Amplat's up about 6% as well, DRD Gold up about 6%, and Yebo Yetu, that report They were up about 5%. The Zeda was up about 4.3% off the back of their results. And as I said, we're speaking to them a little later on in our show. There were some downers on the day. And if we just have a look at them, some of them were the likes of AO, which was down about 8.7%. Attack and Baldwin both down 4%, or 4% each. And then Pepcore was down about 3.5%. So some not so great moves, but some also positive moves on the equity side of it. In terms of the rand, that's strengthened at the start of the week. It's about 0.5% stronger against the euro, the pound, and the dollar. Actually, against the euro, it's about 2/3% stronger. So, very good start to the week for the rand. I just had a look at the chart, and it's interesting that the rand is at the levels that it's at now, at about 18.71, looking to finish out the month negatively at this stage against the dollar, despite the fact that last month it made up about 1.3% against the dollar, going from about 19.60 or 19 Rand 60 highs to around 18 Rand 65. So now we're at about 18.71. We're nowhere near the 18 Rand 11 that we were at earlier in the month. So hopefully we can close the month with some Rand positivity and see if December or January might be the month that we breach that 18 Rand level. There's obviously a lot of country risk premium that's being priced in at this stage. I mean, this past weekend we had stage 6 load shedding, which some say was stage 8 based on the length of outage. But let me give you a quick wrap of the commodities side of things. The Brent crude price is sitting at about $80 a barrel. Gold is above $2,000 an ounce. It's been struggling to get to that point, and it looks as though we might finally be above that point with some momentum. It's sitting at about $2,011 an ounce at this stage. It's up about 0.5% for the day. I'll be interested to see if it can sustain this momentum and sustain these levels, because as we've seen, every time it's touched this $2,000 level, it has bounced below that again. But by all accounts, it's looking as though we're going to end the month positively. It's up about almost 1.4% there. So we'll keep an eye on the gold price there as well. For those that are watching cryptos or that have an interest in cryptos, they're not doing so well. Starting off the week in the red with Bitcoin down about 1.3% below $37,000. Ethereum at about $2,000 down about 2.2%. But we'll dig into some of these movements a little later on, just after 6. For now, Aldrin, we're going to cross back to you and the team.
Thank you so much. That is Jimmy Moyaha back again just after 6 o'clock. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032. You can also drop me a voice note on 0614 104 107 and an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
A very good afternoon, Aldrin, and the listeners of SAFM. I would like to know whether the Road Accident Fund has complied with the Constitutional Court ruling to resume payment on medical scheme. You will remember that on the 19th of October, the Constitutional Court, the apex court in the land, has ordered the RAF to pay the Discovery a little bit of amount to those employees that got injured during a road accident. I would like to know the latest development so far. Swandile Ngeba, Elotdale.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Aldrin, you know, the problem of overtime is not only limited to Buffalo City. It is a general problem in most municipalities. The municipality workers, they are deliberately planning for overtime. And this is where now municipalities are having a problem for service delivery, because they cannot spend money to provide services for the communities. Instead, that money goes to the salaries. And these overtimes are deliberately planned. A fellow person who's working at a municipality in Bloemfontein once said to me, because these guys are saying the politicians are earning more money than themselves, the only way for them to make more money is to work overtimes. So they are working, or they are planning to work to make these overtimes for them to be able to get more money.
Actually, on X, Claudia expresses the same sentiment. She says that this is what a lot of municipal workers are doing. They deliberately don't tend to their jobs and doing it over weekends where they can earn overtime and, of course, double time. The overtime bill exceeds the actual normal labor cost. She goes on to say that this is the exact same modus operandi in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality. There's another X here that I wanted to read. Where is it now? Okay. This one from SA Poverty, speaking about what Dumi touched on a bit earlier on, saying that, Aldrin, do you remember during the time of Brian Baloyi as goalkeeper, he used to put his small bag at the poles, and most people at the time, and most of the time, goals didn't enter his poles. When his small bag is there was believed that the bag has got muti inside. But Dumi has explained earlier on that he had argued that it's actually just his towel. Mandla says clinic operations are suspended during load shedding. Even this side of Mpumalanga, I know of 2 clinics from the area that are not taking patients when there's load shedding, namely Kabokweni Clinic as well as a Buga Clinic. And somebody else was actually saying that that the health department should take responsibility. On the other end, somebody else saying that it must be the security guard that takes responsibility. Let's go to Eunice, who's joining us from Joburg. Good evening, Eunice.
Yeah, hi there, Aldrin. Aldrin, I was driving and I heard your interview with the spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Force.
Sure.
I say, well done to you. Your job as a host is to push for hard questions irrespective of who you're interviewing, and you need to have answers. Well done. I heard that. I mean, the audacity of that guy to tell you when you asked him about 5,000 odd children, he was feeling very hard, if you can recall, to even condemn that outright and saying, the people, as if they are now just a casualty of war. The fact of the matter is, Aldrin, they're using F-16s to bomb residential buildings, which the whole world is seeing there. They're even using white phosphorus, Aldrin, which is banned by the United Nations, because white phosphorus, when used in close-up areas, has got incendiary qualities in it, so it burns people, so all the skin burns. And these are things that are banned by the United Nations. But obviously, Big Brother is with them, they get away with it. And something else, Aldrin, all those people that have been released, coming onto, I'm talking of from the Israeli side, that have coming onto Israeli media, television and radio, they are saying that they were very humanely treated by Hamas there. They were given whatever medication that was available and the food, and they say they were treated very well. So, that just goes to show you. On the flip side, forget Gaza, what's happening there? Are you aware that in the West Bank, besides killing 250 people, they've arrested 3,000 odd people now from October the 7th. So little kids that are locked up in Israeli jails, Aldrin, what crime have they committed? And they are called prisoners. And many of the women who are there also, you see this play of words, Aldrin, hostages, yes, those who Hamas took were hostages. So why don't we call the same people who are kept in Israeli prisons, little children and women, lots of them without charge, why don't we call them hostages also? But the word prisoners is used. So you see the play of words there, and that sinks into people's minds. So I thought I'd bring that to your attention.
Thank you so much.
Well done for your interview, and keep pushing, my friend.
Appreciate the feedback, Eunice, there from Joburg. Let's go to Judah, who's joining us from Guatemala. Good evening.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Sampear. I would like to talk around the issue of the fraudulent and unfair dismissal of members of Pope Crew, male black police officers in the South African Police Force. I was dismissed as a forensic detective in the police force for raising serious corruption within the entire administration of justice, including the judiciary. I have gone through a tribunal within the police force. I have gone through the Triple SPC, which is some kind of CCMA. I've gone through the labor court, and then I raised issues with the Judicial Service Commission of the corruption of the judge there. I have lost everything, every institution I went through. And then I reported the matter to the political organization, the governing party, which I have so much respect for. However, the political leadership has not attended to my issue. It has been 11 years. It's Aldrin, you can see me. I've lost enormous amount of weight. I was talking about kidnapping of black women with regard to the judiciary, with regard to the National Prosecuting Authority, with regard to the Special Investigating Unit. They know me. The minister himself knows about me, but he does not want to help me. Every time I talk to them, they say, no, talk to the National Commissioner. National Commissioner, talk to General Sampear. General Sampear, talk to. So that means they lower from higher positions. They take me all the way down. When I go down, they say, oh, go all the way up. It's been 11 years. I'm starving to death. Please, somebody listen to me and help me out. This is totally unjust, totally un-ANC, totally unconstitutional. I have respect for the political leadership because the preamble
So
of
why
the
is the pop crew not helping you?
Pop crew is all the consulting unions are selling us out. Pop crew has been victimized by South African Police Union, and we're raising issues within Pop crew. Pop crew does not even want to listen. I wrote a letter to the president of COSATU, Comrade Zimbi Solosi, about South African Police Union, which is infested by white racist police officers. I was investigating racist corruption within the police force and the entire administration of justice. Not against the ANC. ANC is not corrupt in this regard, but the white segregationist master. I know they are listening to me because General Delikele knows very well. So I asked Mr. Maseko, that SABC journalist, to go ask the general about this Judah from Guatemala, who has been unjustly and fraudulently dismissed from the police force. 11 years, my brother.
Yeah. What was the charge that you were dismissed on?
Hate speech. They created a crime scene and placed me on the crime scene the same way they have been kidnapping these black people and create a crime scene. I have documentary evidence. Hate speech was the case. And when I go to the SSBC and the Labour Court, this brigadier, whom they know his name, said he could not find anything on my Facebook account that speaks to hate speech. And Section 205 of the Criminal Procedure Act says, before you enter into somebody's space, go to a court and seek a warrant of arrest. There is document in front of me that says, where he says he has not gone into any procedures as far as the permission of a magistrate, as far as the warrant of search is concerned. So please, Mr. Maseko or anybody else, yourself, call the minister or the National Commissioner of Police that what is the side of their story. It's more than what I have. I can share that with the SABC, documentary evidence and direct evidence and scientific evidence. Yeah. I've never lost my case, any case that I investigated, 100% conviction rate for the South African police force. South Africa needs police officers like me.
Judah, let's see what the team can do. That's Judah there from Guatemala. 0614-104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Dressing up is a winning mentality.
If you look good, you do good.
You feel good too.
Big ups to Polo South Africa
for making the SABC Sport team look good during the Rugby World Cup France 2023. Class and style on another level.
Rolez-vous.
Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
So much for your time.
Hello, Adrian. From what I know from the public hospitals, that security companies or security personnel, they run the hospitals. I just visited a brother of mine in Cape Town, in Mitchell's Plain Hospital, where the security were seemingly in charge of what happens in the hospital. They decide, they are the doctors, basically, as far as I'm concerned. So what happened in Limpopo is just a tip of an iceberg. Thomas, Cape Town.
Good afternoon, Aldrin Sampear and SAFM listeners. Just when you opened your show there, spoke about Zongezo Zibi, the leader of Rise Mzansi. Just when I thought I lost hope in politics, this young man brought it back to me. He's so fantastic. He's got a vision, that young man. And he can articulate things the way they should be. I like him. I like the way he's saying things. I like the way he's seeing the future of this country going forward. Then, I highly appreciate his being. And I wish all South Africans can really listen to this young man and look at him as a leader. Marumo Maike. I like the man. Thank you.
Hi, Aldrin and SAFM listeners. Thank you for those good questions, Aldrin. Today, call it a successful operation when they bombed the hospitals. 6,150 children died in the operation. Today, call it a successful one or what? Israel and USA, they are just murderers. Morocco and Colombia.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
We've come to the end of our voyage. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 326 with me, Aldrin Sampear. Today we're playing out with Busim Hlong or Ding Ding, and our parting shot is from Mahatma Gandhi, who once said, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." And Linda is reading our credits this evening.
Hi BTH listeners. This is the BTH team saying goodbye this evening. Behind the mic is Aldrin Sampear, our captain, and Tumi on the sport desk. And thank you also to the production team, Temba, Amandla, Vusani, Finis, and Lundi. Till we meet again tomorrow. Thank you.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
And remember to love each other and lead with compassion. Totsins, enjoy the rest of your evening.